Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tony Humphreys, and I am working at the agency for a very long time, since about 1996 when I joined, and in a variety of capacities. So it's a pleasure for me to be invited to sort of kick off this session, and it's largely been put together by the team on the right here in terms of Emmanuel, Ralph, Maribel, Pier Paolo, Lucia and Tatiana in the back. And it's a real pleasure for me, because this is an innovation in itself, having an academia info day. Yeah? So we've had visits from individual delegations over the years in piecemeal. We had to go into no visits at all during COVID like everybody else. But it's a great pleasure then that not only do we have a hell of a lot of people here in the room, but I'm very conscious we also have a hell of a lot of people online. And of course that represents the new post-COVID sort of hybrid working environment that we're all very much used to. It's a pleasure for me to welcome you to the European Medicines Agency, but in fact it's your EMA, because it's your agency. It's an agency of the Commission, the European Union, and because you're all citizens, we are your agency, and what we do is for you, and what we do, you tell us what to do, and you judge our results collectively. You may not believe that, but genuinely that's what it is. We are your agency, so hopefully you can be a little proud of us, and you can reserve judgment on that till what you hear for the rest of the morning. But welcome to your agency, and you should always demand what you want of your agency as we go forward into the future. The tagline of the agency is science, medicines and health. So science is wonderful. We're all very scientific, particularly you guys who've got your finger on the pulse of the cutting edge science, just coming out of college, etc., postgraduate studies, early research. And that's the bedrock for us. We're an evidence-based agency, have always been, and we'd like to think we're a reference agency on a global level. The medicine has been our focus, and there's both the human medicines, but also very importantly, we have an animal, we have a veterinary arm as well. And very recently, as a consequence of the pandemic, we've also got our nose into areas such as medical devices, medtech, the convergence of health technologies, digital solutions, that kind of thing. And we've also got into the challenge of supply and availability of medicines in Europe, which is absolutely huge. So science, medicines, health. So what we do is pretty much all of the innovation in Europe comes through these doors, and we then give an opinion on it. And you'll hear about that in detail then from the colleagues. And we hope then that guides the best use of these products, both initially and indeed for their life cycle when they're on the market, 10, 20, 30, 40 years, even longer. So that's what we're about. And of course, then we're contributing to health, at least we hope we are. We're hoping not to damage it either. And we contribute to it. And we're essentially, our reporting office in Brussels in terms of the Director General Sante is our sort of entry door in Brussels. It's under the sort of health directorate. We're a health agency in a sense, at least we hope to be. Maybe just before I hand over to the colleagues to take you through the programme, and I think Ralph will introduce the agenda more structured, I thought maybe you might be interested, you might not, and apologies if you're not. I'll talk a little bit about myself, which I normally don't do, but and how I got here type of thing, because I think it's you guys have got your careers right ahead of you. Mine is almost finished. So you guys have got the whole world ahead of you, and your choice of careers is very exciting, particularly if you find yourself in the life sciences sort of area. Personally, I signed up, I was very interested in school and things like physics, biology, maths, that kind of thing, very geeky, I suppose. And I signed up to a pharmacy course in Ireland back in the late 70s, which, and apologies for the date. But the course, we had just joined Europe a couple of years earlier, 73, and this course was designed 78, 79. And they deliberately designed the pharmacy course to allow you to have a qualified person so that you could work in the pharmaceutical industry, signing off on products, etc. And, that sounded pretty interesting as an idea. So that got me into pharmacy. And then after that, I went into industry. I started off in a small generics company. I ended up in a big brand, big pharma, and I worked on a whole host of sort of therapeutic areas. And I wore the white coat and I had the safety goggles, as you always do when you're in the labs, etc. That was the experience. But then I got very impatient because to develop drugs is really challenging, 10, 15, 20 years, and the failure rate's pretty high. So then I said, I prefer to get more at the action end, like where it all gets compiled, the results are positive, you're putting it into bodies such as ourselves, the regulators, and that was an attractive prospect. So I started off in the industry working on that side, getting the dossiers, compiling all the information, the quality, the non-clinical, the safety, the clinical data, compiling all of that, working on labels, products, etc. And that got me into what we call regulatory affairs, regulatory science. And then I flipped over when the agency opened up in London a long time ago, 1995. I banged in an application because, again, it seemed stimulating, it seemed interesting. Yeah? So that got me into the agency, and the agency didn't have the intelligence to get rid of me yet. So, it's good. You can, once you get in, guys, you can stay in if you want, So the only thing I'll say is the evolution that I've seen since I've been here has been dramatic. And the big thing has been the revolution in biology. A lot of the times when I started off, it was mostly small molecules, organic chemistry, etc. And the flip over to biological science, biotech, has been amazing. And of course, once you get more sophisticated compounds, you then have got delivery challenges in terms of how do you get it? Because, if you bang it into your stomach, it's going to be dead in a few minutes. So that's the challenge of these convergent technologies with regards to the fantastic revolution in biology, but then aided by the evolution in medtech, diagnostics, and also delivery systems. And I think we really are at a very, very exciting point of evolution with the science. And if you get nothing else out of today is to understand science drives everything. The true creativity lies with you guys, with academia, with that basic research, and it's something that Europe does really good. And then the translation of that is what we are all about. And us working in this agency is all about trying to translate that fantastic creativity at the beginning into something that's very usable for the patient down in the end. And I hope then the colleagues have put together this program for you, and hopefully you'll find it stimulating. But also, I can just only envy you because, as I said, my arrow is falling, but your arrow is rising. You have got fantastic careers ahead of you in almost any branch that you want to choose. And maybe you'll find some of the stuff we talk about might be inspirational for yourselves with regards to your future decisions. Ralph, that's probably more than enough from me. So with that, I will thank you very much for your attention. Thank you for coming to your agency. I hope you enjoy the day, and good luck with everything else in your life that follows after that. So thank you.
Tony, thank you very much indeed. And this is an inspiration still to me and my days. And I want to say that I'm really exhilarated that you're all joining here. It makes it feel real. I'm beating it 120 per minute. So this is thanks to you for coming both in person and also online. We have been mingling a bit just before we came into this meeting room, and we have made huge efforts to make this a very useful meeting for you. And I will ask you in a short moment to use your mobile or other electronic devices because we want to get some input from you. And while you're getting out your devices, let me introduce you to the agenda that is prepared for today. We have in total 5 sessions in between a coffee break. And again, I know that we will use this to look into your questions where you are, but we also want to hear from you. In the first part, the sessions are on how the EMA is working and organized. Then we will look a little bit deeper into veterinary medicinal products, but then also add how we are working with stakeholders. I'm not going into detail now because this will be the exciting part that our fantastic presenters from across the agency will address. And then after the coffee break, go deeper into how we are looking at innovation, supporting it, wanting it, and facilitating it, and then finishing with an all-important section on opportunities at the EMA. This partly overlaps and resonates with the poster stations that you have already seen outside, and I encourage everyone who didn't have a chance so far to go back and have a look at the posters and maybe take a snapshot of them, and also scan the QR codes that are ready to help you with further information. So this agenda is to present you not only with information on what we are doing at your medicines agency, but you will also hear from every colleague why they are doing it and why we are doing it as an agency. What's the purpose and concretely the mission for veterinary medicines with stakeholders for innovation. And I encourage every one of our speakers to also give it a personal flavor, as just Tony did. How does it feel? What are our challenges? What are the particular questions where we also hope to hear from you and to engage you? And essentially, what we hope you take home is information on both two things: how you, as a current or future developer of innovation, could work with us and come and make your European Medicines Agency also work for you. And also how perhaps you want to think yourself to be part of that European Medicines Agency and the wider European Medicines Regulatory Network that supports all the medicines that we have on the market. So that's the excitement I have when I look at the agenda, and you need to tell us if that's coming real for you. And to kick it off, we're now going to show the first Slido question, please. And I encourage you to scan the QR code here. And we want to ask you the first question. And the first question is about what are the types of medicines that you're interested in? And we would hope to get a number of quick answers. Need to show again the Slido code, please. So there we have it. And we're very much aware that many of you are coming from universities across Europe, particularly from the Netherlands, but we were not quite sure if you're already clearly in either the human or the veterinary medicines development, or maybe are developing technologies and methodologies that are relevant for both, because that is also our ambition, to feed into both this. Regulatory practice, okay, very interesting. Very good. We were also hoping to attract colleagues who are already engaged in veterinary medicine development, and if what you're doing could also feed into that, please feel free to tick also that box. Very good. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Very good, colleagues. Thank you very much. That gives us a first impression of where we are starting today. And now we have two quick questions for you. And let me tell you that we want to ask the same questions at the end of the meeting. It will give us a little delta. And the idea is to ask you about what do you currently know at the beginning of our meeting about the type of products that the EMA regulates. And it's a multiple choice. You can take several options, and it's meant to give us an idea of where we are starting. And we hope that after the end, in session 5, we will get a reflection that covers then the same question with answers. Fantastic. Okay. Excellent. So here, I think we can move to the next question. We already have almost 100 answers. And the next and final question that we will repeat at the end is, at which stage can a developer from the academic sector contact the EMA? And this will be particularly interesting for us as we are interested in these contacts. And I don't want to give away the answer. Please have a look. All right, 60 colleagues, 65 and counting, 70. Thank you very much. It already shows how rapidly you are able to provide input, and I think that's a fantastic help. So the final ask from my side is to keep the Slido open. We will use it in each of the sessions to invite you to ask questions. So briefly, we will start with the first presentation, but this Slido will change and invite you to ask questions that then we will pick up in the Q&A that follows the presentation. Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. It's now my great pleasure to invite my colleague Christina, to kick us off with an overview on the organization and functioning of the EMA and the EU Medicines Regulatory Network. Christina, you're heading the Orphan Medicines Office, but you also did scientific advice and especially focused on supporting the evidence generation for persons who are suffering from rare diseases. So thank you very much for joining us here, and the floor is yours.
On the microphone, just like everybody has when you have a question, you have to switch on the microphone. It's exactly the same. Right, so yeah, my name is Christina Larsson. I am Swedish. I work for the agency for a long time, maybe not as long as Tony, but still quite some time. And it is the first time I'm actually presenting in this room since we moved to the agency, and it's so nice to see you here, really. I cannot say everything online, etc. It's very nice to have people online as well, but it's very nice to see you here in the auditorium. So I am going to take you through very high level introduction, and then you will hear from other colleagues later on more in detail about these things. So there will be some repetition over the day. However, as they say, repetition is very good, how you learn. So don't fear. You will probably forget a lot of things as well. The slides, I think, will be available to you, everything, and you can always contact us later on if you want to know more details. There. This is the European Medicines Agency. Or at least it could be, and it could be as non-transparent from the outside, because we have this beautiful building, but what do we do? Exactly what do we do? Hopefully, after today, you will have a little bit more insight in sort of who is where in this anthill. Because we have a lot of things that we do and a lot of people here in this anthill, but also sort of across Europe. So you will hear a lot of all of these points that are coming up on scientific advice, qualifications, what we do for the therapeutic areas, etc. So hopefully by the end of the day, you will be the wiser and more knowledgeable about what's in our big anthill. And not only me, but also the colleagues later on will take you through this interesting walk. You may be familiar with this view through the various rooms, the various presentations, what we're going to cover today. And there were already some statements on what you should bring with you. The one I would like you to take away from here is how much your research counts, and also how you can make it specifically count and suitable for the regulatory purpose. So, what is the European Medicines Agency then? We cater for the 450 million people across the whole of the European Union and the EEA countries. And I did try to find out how many animals were actually available as well, but there were no such data. I checked ChatGPT. It just told me there is no such information available. But I think we have a good guess to say that it's more than humans. So we cater for all of those. Now, how do we do? Well, obviously we're talking about the 27 member states, and it's also a very big market for pharmaceutical industry. As you can see, almost 24% of the pharmaceutical market is in the European Economic Area, because it's quite a big place actually. Now, push the right button in. Our main mission is to protect human and animal health, and maybe after today, someone will be more interested in also working with the animals and the veterinary health, even though there was no one sort of signing up for that right now, but hopefully later on you will. And the idea is then that we facilitate the development and try to help the developers to get to the point where they can actually get a marketing authorization. And we do that by pre-authorization help, but also things that are done much after the marketing authorization. So the scientific evaluations that we do are both for the human and the veterinaries. And they're done here at the agency by the committees, and we will get back to that. The ultimate decision is not by us, actually, whether a product can come to the market. It is by the Commission. And once a product is approved, it can be marketed across all the European Union. We also monitor the safety of products, as I said, after they have been marketed. And ultimately, we try and provide information, reliable information, which is the same across the whole of the European Union. So it's not in my country, Sweden, it wouldn't be sort of certain things that we put forward, but it's the same across the whole of the EU. And I think that's incredibly important, maybe especially nowadays when things can easily be distorted, you see fake news, but this is one thing that is exactly the same across the whole of the EU. So I'm always interested in who does the things. And in this particular case here, so you see me, my colleagues, but we're obviously not alone. We have the odd 900 colleagues working in this building, and then we're talking about people, the IT, handling everything, communication and personal, the colleagues Monica Hankiewicz, you will see later today, for example, the HR business. So it's a lot of people, but that's still just a small part of it, because the majority of the experts are spread out over the whole of the EU. So we have, as you see, this about 4,000 experts in our database from everywhere across the member states, and also from the national competent authorities, so the licensing bodies in each member state. And in the end, the people who actually come up with the opinions, they are the committee members of the 7 committees that we work with. We have a lot of abbreviations, and you see the 7 committees, they're all abbreviated. So I'll try and clarify. The CHMP is the Committee for Human Medicinal Products. The CVMP is for the veterinary. The COMP is the one that I work with. Actually, we finished our meeting yesterday. So the Orphan Medicinal Products Committee. And then we have the Herbal Medicinal Products Committee, special committee for that. We have the ones dealing with the pediatric products and the pediatric development plans. And the CAT is the one for advanced therapies. And then finally, the PRAC, which is the Pharmacovigilance and Risk Assessment Committee. So all of those committees work together to come up with scientific opinions. And I think Tony already said that the agency was indeed founded in 1995, so quite some time ago. And then it was in London, and now we're here instead. Interesting. Also, just very briefly, so you sort of understand, this is, by the way, figures from 2022, so there should be more products actually licensed now. But over 1,300 products for human use have been authorized at in this centralized procedure at the agency, and more than 260 for animals. And so then it is a network, and it is a scientific body as well. And we have let's see here, the national competent authorities. So not each country could have more than one national competent authority. So Sweden only has one. Germany, for example, has two. They have one for their chemical products and one for the biological products. So there are a lot of groups across Europe, all trying to work together through the European Medicines Agency. And we are indeed trying to ensure that the best expertise can be the ones working with the agency. There are some problems occasionally because we have a very strict conflict of interest declaration. Now, we'll get back to that later on. But of course, sometimes the best expert, like in the field that I work with orphans, there are not that many experts actually. And of course, then the very best may be the one who are already involved with companies in development, etc. But still, I think that with the network we have across Europe, it's super interesting, and it's also fantastic to have this pool of experts to pull from. So it's not me or indeed one single person who's doing this. It's all working together. Now, this we will get back to quite a lot later on as well, in more detail. So the agency does a lot before marketing authorization, not only for the marketing authorization procedure, but also before. And there's a long list of things to do here. For example, we have what's called the Innovation Task Force. And this is something that is a collaboration and interaction at the very early stage when a developer or a group, it's quite usually academic people, an academic group coming to discuss an idea that they have. You will be talking about that later on as well? Yeah, okay, so I won't talk much more about that then. Oh, okay, I get to talk more about it. Yes, so yeah, the Innovation Task Force. So the thing is that you can come to the agency with a very early idea. It could be for maybe a new endpoint. You think that I'm developing in this particular disease field. I think that this particular endpoint should be used. I've seen that patients are interested in it. I've seen that it could be a useful tool to measure progress in patients. So then you can come without sort of having a product already, but just discuss at a very early stage and see maybe this is something that could be used in the future. And then very open discussion, no implications whatsoever afterwards, but just this give and take discussion with the agency. And there could also be recommendations of what you can do after that. For example, you could, I'm going to jump the PRP program, you could come for scientific advice if you wanted to develop a product later on using this particular endpoint. The discussion or the mention here on the pediatric investigational plans, this is because we have a special incentive, a special regulation for pediatric medicines. The idea is that just like for the orphans, not many companies were that interested in actually developing products for pediatric patients. It's a smaller patient population and it can also be quite difficult to do. And therefore, there are these sort of incentives and also demands that once you develop a product for adults, you also have to look into the possibility, can this be used for children? And then they have to come up with a plan. So this is what my colleagues in-house, together with the pediatric committee, do. They try and set out a plan for clinical studies in children. What could also be an outcome, if you come at an early stage, is that maybe you think, this endpoint that I was thinking of. I really think I'm on the good way now to getting this. It should really be used. I had the Innovation Task Force meeting. You could ask for a qualification of this endpoint, so a qualification of a novel methodology. It's sort of like a scientific advice. You come to the scientific advice working party, discuss, and ultimately, you can either get sort of advice how to develop it in order that you can use it later on. And if you're really lucky and everything goes well, you may actually get a tick and say, yeah, we agree. You can use this endpoint for your clinical study, and we will accept that when you come for marketing authorization. if it was successful. Then I think, well, you're sort of not working for industry yet. Many small academic groups, if they have a product, also form a small and medium-sized enterprise, and that's this SME, which can be a useful thing to do instead of having a whole university trying to do the development. And for small and medium-sized enterprises, we also have very special attention, very special care, colleagues who work only with these companies, trying to help them, ensuring that they know the regulatory pathway. And, well, it's very nice, actually, that since I work with orphans, and in the beginning I didn't even know, but there was also the same thing for veterinary product. It wasn't called exactly the same. But the fact is that we incentivize not only development for rare diseases in humans, but also for animals. So if there is a very rare disease in animals, then there is a special program also for animal rare disease development, although they're not called orphans there. And finally, on this slide, we have the priority medicines. And an old colleague of ours who now left the agency some years ago, he said that this was the extra love you give to these products. The ones that have the potential to really serve an unmet medical need. Novel ideas and maybe targeting a patient population where there is very little available. And for these products, they can get a special sort of stamp, say this is a priority medicine. We get the rapporteurs involved at an early stage, the extra love throughout the development, the scientific advice or protocol assistance, and also at the time of marketing authorization, they could hopefully get sort of a quicker assessment at the time. So there is a lot of things to be done during pre-marketing authorization. So we've been speaking a lot. You can consider me like the owl there. Actually, when I picked this picture, it wasn't necessarily me I was thinking of. It was actually the next topic, which it was indeed more about scientific advice, because you can consider those, the owl is, this is from a children's book in Sweden, and the owl is the teacher, and all the kids go and listen to the owl, and she's sort of the wise teacher. And the minions sitting next to her, we could consider that now the scientific advice working party, possibly. And the people listening are the applicants in this particular case. And I think scientific advice is probably where maybe most of you will ever be involved in the future. It's called protocol assistance if you have an orphan designation. And it's a procedure where you interact with the agency, you ask specific questions. They can be on almost anything, and it has to be before marketing authorization. But they could be on, you know, how do I manufacture this? What type of formulation should it be? Is my non-clinical package suitable? Have I done enough tox studies? The primary endpoint, indeed, as we were talking about, of my clinical study, is the patient population the right one? Really, almost anything goes in this particular case. And you will ultimately get a response from the Scientific Advice Working Party, which has been endorsed by the Committee for Human Medicinal Products. And you can then use that for your further development. But it can also be done sort of at an early stage. You may not have that much information, and in your case, may not be sort of the final pivotal study, but it could be at an early development instead. So how are the medicines approved across Europe? Well, here we have the centralized procedure. So obviously, we're talking about one authorization across the whole of the EU and the EA, all member states. Once it's approved everywhere. Having said that, it may not be available Because the one thing we do not do here, we approve the product, but we do not discuss reimbursement. This may be something that will come later on as well. That is not our remit. Only to assess the benefit risk and ensure that this product is safe for patients. So that's the centralized procedure. There are also other options, like the national procedure, you see there. When you have a product authorized in one single country, there is also the possibility to have a mutual recognition. So, for example, I know there's quite a few from the Netherlands here today. If a product is approved in the Netherlands and we would like it to be approved in my home country, Sweden, then we can have this sort of mutual recognition procedure. And there is also one, if you ever get across it, called the decentralized procedure. That's when you apply in multiple member states at the same time. Now, that sounded like it was sort of a choice where to go. It's not really. In the majority, and you actually had the Slido question about that, in the majority of cases, you will know upfront which way you have to go. Because if you are developing a product for any of these, HIV, cancer, diabetes, there's neurodegenerative diseases, autoimmune, or viral diseases, orphan products, ATMPs, advanced therapies, biologicals, or indeed the innovative veterinary medicines, you have to come to the centralized procedure. There is no choice. And even if you are not developing for those, there is also the possibility of a centralized procedure if you have a new active substance, or if you think that my product really has a very significant therapeutic use across the whole of the EU. So more and more products obviously are authorized centrally. So maybe this is sort of a bit, you would think, yeah, of course, why is it good? What's the benefit for having a centralized procedure and this discussion? So, as we already mentioned, it's approved everywhere at the same time. You don't have to go through each member state and get the decision. So 27 plus the 3 immediately once. And we also, I think what is really important is this centralized safety monitoring. And of course, the product information we mentioned, every communication is the same for each medicinal product. So I think that's a huge benefit for me as a citizen of the EU to ensure that, I go in Sweden or in the Netherlands or in Germany or in Slovenia, it's all the same. So I can't be in the Netherlands without having a reference to a bicycle. Now, this actually has to do with things turning. And that was my thinking with this particular slide. Because, of course, things go round and round. And it doesn't stop with the marketing authorization or the things before. But as we mentioned, also the safety monitoring afterwards, which is hugely important. So across Europe, we collect safety data, and that can be patients reporting having a problem when they are taking a tablet. It can be the physicians reporting it through clinical trials, for example, regulatory bodies across Europe. Everybody reports when there are side effects. These signals are collected and then assessed by the PRAC, the Pharmacovigilance Risk Committee. And they will look at all this information, issue an opinion, they will communicate this, they communicate this to the Committee for Human Medicinal Products, who can actually decide, this product is actually so dangerous, we will have to take it off the market. Rarely happens, but it could. That's sort of the procedure. Or there will be new guidance issued, maybe, that this product shouldn't be taken together with, this other product or this type of food, for example. So it's very important that that this is followed up and communicated. Yeah. Also, what is important is we really consider sort of the independence of our work here. And as mentioned, it is conflict of interest. So, for example, each member of the agency every year has to assign a form about our conflict of interest. So I have to say that I don't have shares in whatever company, and I don't work for this company. And the same is for all the member states, the committee members, the experts. They are not allowed to have sort of financial gains from developers. So that's hugely important. What is also important is, of course, that it's never one person's decision what we do here. It wouldn't be up to me to say, oh, well, this product should be approved. No, we're talking about an assessment team for the products. There's the rapporteur, the co-rapporteur, and then the peer reviewer. And then we have the whole committee who will all debate, maybe have different views, which is good. Ultimately, they will have to come to an agreement. And it's the whole committee that then recommends a positive, negative opinion. So it's not one person, it's really a teamwork in this particular case. We also pride ourselves, I think, with transparency and ensuring that information is available. So if you have been looking at our website, you can see that information is available on all the marketing authorization procedures, the assessment report, so you can see exactly why was the CHMP positive or why were they negative. What did they not like on this case? What we also do is that we provide information on the clinical trials, actually. So there's a special website where you can find information on clinical trial data. Right now, you have to be very interested in COVID because the majority of the information there are about the COVID vaccines. And it had to do with the period of the COVID, but now we are really trying to ensure that all the additional data will be there as well. But yeah, it's important to know that if sort of almost everything that we do can be given to the public. Also, if you cannot find it there is also a possibility of this access to documents and getting the information that way. And I think finally, we're now seeing the end of the tunnel for my presentation. Again, think of this day, because it could also be the sort of beginning of the rest of all the presentations. Think of this day to bring with you the things that you need for your research that can make that little difference for the patients or for the animals, that you can use it in a regulatory environment. Thank you.
Fantastic, and thank you so much, Christina. This is an excellent start into the day, the overview on the activities, the purpose, and the outcomes for all of us. And I hope that this stimulates you to ask some questions, and please have a look again at the Slido and give us some questions. And while you're thinking it, I wanted to share that we know that half of you are identifying as students and half have said you are researchers. So I think, Christina, you've addressed both the colleagues that are in the auditorium and online from this background. And I hope that some of this resonates with you and you can also use it as a reference point for getting started. You also covered that our activities are often case for medicinal products, but they are equally for research methods themselves, and we will come back to that point. So, colleagues, while you're typing up questions, perhaps we do have 2 minutes. I just wanted to ask if, Christina, do you want to share any personal view on how you keep this wheel turning and what, from your perspective, makes you happy to have made it turn well? How does it look like and feel from your perspective that you are doing and see it having such an effect?
Yeah, so I also worked for a pharmaceutical industry before coming here. And 2 years I worked for one clinical study that then failed, which was a bit miserable, I'd say. Here, so I'm very lucky working with orphans. They come for designation, and I I'll tell people it's a little bit like Christmas, not maybe every day, but every week, because we get these applications for new, sometimes strange, sometimes ridiculous, sometimes fantastic ideas and diseases. And it's so rewarding, both to see that, because we designate at an early stage, but occasionally we also see them at marketing authorization. And I have been here so long that I've seen designation, protocol assistance, scientific advice, and then the product actually reaching the market, which is incredible. I just have to say, yeah.
Fantastic to know one has played a role there. So thank you very much for that example. I'll take one question now that we have received, and then we move on. And this goes back to your suggestion for scientific advice. What is the time frame for receiving scientific advice? And we can have a brief answer here. And we can also say that we know some academics find it challenging to wait for scientific advice, but it's actually quite quick. So do you want to give us a quick overview on that?
Yeah, so everything we do it revolves around the committees, and they meet once a month. And that's why some of the procedures is not like you pick up the phone or send an email and ask a question and you get the answer. So there is a procedure. You submit questions through IRIS, it's called, so an online form. And then it's sort of a 70-day procedure. From the beginning to the end. So it can be quite long, but at least it ensures that you do have views from all over Europe.
Thank you very much, Christina.
I was just wondering if I can come back for the coffee break, if you have any more questions. I'll be here for the coffee break.
Please do. We will keep the questions that you have now typed up and keep the Slido open. There will be more questions. We will pick them. So I close this session and I hand over with huge kudos to my colleague Maribel, who is the driving force behind the day today. And I've already loved it. And we will continue in the spirit. Handing over to you for the next session, Maribel.
Thank you very much, Rob. For this session, we would be overviewing the veterinary work that the EMA does with veterinary medicines. We have our colleague, Ana Vidal, who is a veterinarian with a PhD on infection diseases, a master's on epidemiology, and an expert on food safety and zoonotic diseases and other public health issues, such as AMR, antimicrobial resistance. And I joined the EMA in the year 2020 as an antimicrobial resistant scientist. And she is now working in the Veterinary Strategy and Support Office, coordinating the veterinary regulatory research activities and providing support and strategic advice on One Health issues. And welcome, Anna, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Maribel, for the kind introduction, and good morning, everyone. It is a great pleasure for me to be here as a former scientist and academic myself, of course, a few years back now. It is an excellent opportunity to stand up here today to be talking to you about some of the aspects of regulation of veterinary medicines in the domain of animals. And we have heard a lot already today in the first presentation about the work of the agency and how we work. And in many ways, it's not very different, but there are some differences and about what we do in the vet domain and why we do it. So just as an outline of my presentation, I will give you a very high-level overview of what we do and why we do it. I will pass by very quickly through the marketing authorization process, highlighting some peculiarities of doing that for medicines for animals. I will also highlight or try to highlight some of the key strategic areas and topics of interest for the veterinary domain. And also I will share with you some examples of how we engage with the research activities and with academics like you. And And finally, I didn't want to miss the opportunity to actually highlight the importance of the One Health approach, and I will talk briefly about that at the end of my presentation. So we have seen this slide already in the first presentation, and again, it's good to have it here because it shows that what we do for the regulation of veterinary medicines is very similar, and the core purpose and the core mission is for us is also to protect public health and animal health. And we do that through the same objectives and the same activities. So basically, we facilitate the development and the access to medicines for animals. We evaluate scientifically the applications for the marketing authorization of those medicines. And we also monitor the safety of those medicines after the authorization to make sure that they remain safe and that the benefits always outweigh the risks of those medicines. And finally, we also provide, and it's our responsibility, to provide information about those medicines to those who use them, and in this case, the veterinarians, the farmers, and so on. What is covered by the veterinary domain? I think this slide probably speaks by itself. So the challenge that we face is that we work with a wide range of animal species, as you can see here in the slide. So we can talk about two different groups that probably you can easily recognize: the food-producing animals at the top. And you can see the number already reflected in the pictures. So those that are very important to make sure that we have food on the table to eat and that food is safe. And of course, we have the non-food producing animals, and that encompasses, of course, our lovely companion animals, dogs and cats, but even more than that, the zoo animals, and so on. So just to start, I think you can see that we are facing with the challenge of actually providing medicines for a really wide range of diverse population. But what is the aim? The aim of the authorization of veterinary medicines is the same as the aim of the authorization of human medicines, and that is to provide veterinary medicinal products that are safe, that are efficacious, and of acceptable quality for the animals. However, it is true that when we ensure that we provide safety or medicines of safe medicines in the human domain, we need to, and in the veterinary domain, both, we need to provide medicines that are safe for the animal or for the person, for the user of the medicine, in this case, for people in contact, providing those medicines to the animals, the farmer, the veterinarian. The medicines, they have to be safe for the environment as well, and that applies to both domains. However, in the veterinary domain, we also need to ensure, as I said earlier, that the food is safe from any residues from those medicines. And so we need to provide medicines that are safe for the consumer as well. So how are the veterinary medicinal products regulated in the EU? And everything that we heard earlier about how the agency works and contributes, I think applies. But in terms of legislation and regulation, there are, of course, big differences. So on the left-hand side, just to say that in order to have a medicine marketed in the EU for use in animals, they need to have a marketing authorization. And there is a regulation, and in fact, it's a very relatively new regulation that came into force in January 2022 last year, which regulates how medicines are marketed and make sure that ensures that the medicines are safe, of enough quality and effective, and provides provisions to regulate everything about these medicines in terms of how they are monitored, how they are manufactured, how they are used, distributed, and so on. And on the right-hand side, and because of the peculiarity of having to treat animals that are for consumption, then we also need to ensure that when we use those medicines in the animals, that any residues that can be left from the use of those medicines in the food derived from those animals is safe and is not harmful. And that's what is called the maximum residues limit. And that's the maximum concentration of the medicine in the food from the animals that can be allowed. And that is regulated by a different regulation, and also the substances that are allowed to use are also published in a Commission regulation, as you can see there. So this is very important to take into account, and I will explain later on a bit more about this. And the two, so the marketing authorization is one dossier, and the information required to get the maximum residue limits approved is another separate application. This is the regulation that is governing the marketing authorization of the veterinary medicinal products. And as I said earlier, this regulation 2019/6 is a new regulation that came into force in January 2022. And so it brings lots of opportunities to actually, the aim is to achieve a better regulation for veterinary medicines. And the purpose of this regulation is to provide, of course, a more modern and innovative and fit for purpose legal framework. It supports and incentivizes innovation, incentivizes the availability of medicines, and very importantly, and probably you are all aware about the importance of antimicrobial resistance. So this regulation is one of the pillars of the EU to actually support the EU action against the fight against antimicrobial resistance. And I will be talking a little bit more about that in a minute. Now I want to just briefly show you some of the areas that are becoming important, are really important and hot topics for the veterinary domain. And that is captured in our regulatory science strategy to 2025. And of course, now we need to talk about innovation and we need to talk about science. And innovation is developing very fast. And we in the vet domain, as in the human domain, we need to anticipate those developments and those technologies. And we need to be, we regulators, we need to be prepared to make sure that we take benefit of those developments and that we translate those technical developments into new medicines, into available medicines to protect the health of the animals. And this is what the reason why this strategy was put together as a bit of a plan to say how we are going to incorporate all these new innovations into the development of our medicines. So the first objective is it talks about catalyzing the integration of science and innovation. The second one talks about the importance of the evidence. And I will give a few examples in a minute, the evidence generation and how that is important for the development of medicines. Also, another goal is to address emerging health threats in the context, particularly for the vet domain in the context of zoonotic diseases and other emerging health threats, and also to enable the research and innovation to actually be incorporated and have access to it and be used. So I will give you just a few examples under each of those goals. Each of those goals were, of course, put together with some recommendations and some actions, and you can check the regulatory science strategy because I think it's a very useful document to actually reflect on what are some of the challenges that we are facing, but also some of the opportunities. And the first one, as I said, talks about science and technology and how we can integrate those. And then we need to talk about the novel therapies and all these new technologies that can be translated into medicines. And I just flagged up here in the slide 3 of these novel therapies that are coming up quite importantly in the vet domain, and those are the cell-based veterinary therapies, for example, bacteriophages and phage therapy, and there is a new guideline published by the agency about that a few weeks ago, and also nanotechnologies and how those techniques can be incorporated into veterinary medicines. The next goal, the second goal, is driving collaborative evidence generation. And I think Here I need to talk about data. I need to talk about the need to actually generate the evidence, because when we evaluate and we do the scientific evaluation of new medicines and for marketing authorization, the evaluation can be as good as the data that is supporting the marketing application. And here I would like to highlight, for example, two areas in which this is reflected. One is the importance of generating more data to ensure environmental safety of the products. So you know that probably you are aware of the importance of understanding the impact of the use of medicines, but also pesticides, chemicals, and the impact that those can have for the environment. So it is important to understand that. And we are working particularly when we talk about products that are used for aquaculture, for example, but also ectoparasites in dogs and cats, and what is the impact of the use of those products for the environment and for the ecosystems. On the right-hand side of the slide, of course, is big data and real-world evidence. And this is also at the core of the new technologies. And I think the new technologies are making data available for us in an unprecedented way, in the way that it's a huge amount of data. The question here is how can we access the data that is generated? And this applies again both to the human domain and to the veterinary domain. There is a lot of information generated in farming, for example, and that can be potentially used to support the authorization of medicines and the development of new medicines. The question here is how to access the data, how we can analyze the data and make that data readily available, and how we can develop the standards to make sure that the data is acceptable for the purpose. So those are some of the challenges that, but also some of the opportunities. And I will, in the slide, you can see here that we are holding the third stakeholder forum on big data on the 23rd of November in a couple of weeks time. And I invite you here already to register if you are interested in this area, because it's really very important that we understand what are the challenges of using big data and real world data, but also the opportunities, the great opportunities that this can bring in the context of the veterinary medicines. Emerging health threats is another goal. So we need to be prepared to make sure that we can react to protect the health of the animals and the public health from new diseases. And one of the threats, of course, as I said earlier, is the development of antimicrobial resistance. And this is a high priority for the agency. And in fact, the new regulation that I presented to you offers a toolbox of actions to contain the risk of development antimicrobial resistance. And in the agency, and particularly in the vet division, we collect consumption data of antimicrobials and we monitor that. And that's very important to understand how much of the antibiotics are used and how they are used. We promote responsible use of antimicrobials through the authorization of antibiotics and medicines. We provide advice to the Commission as well in different areas of antimicrobial resistance. And it's very important, of course, to ensure that we support development of alternatives to antimicrobials and new medicines, because the ones we have very soon may not be effective because of the issue of antimicrobial resistance. And we do this, of course, in cooperation, and this is something that is a global issue and requires a global action. So it is important that we talk and cooperate internationally. And on the right-hand side, vaccines and alternatives to antimicrobials. Again, to show vaccines, I would say, is one of the key tools to protect from diseases. And in the animals, of course, also can be used to protect against zoonotic diseases that can then be transmitted to the human population. So therefore, it's very important that we have the flexibility to develop new vaccines to tackle the key emerging health threats. And I would like, for example, to give you an example, such as the highly pathogenic avian influenza, which we don't have a vaccine for, but again, I think it's very important to take into account that the innovation and development is very important in this space. And alternatives to antimicrobials, as I said, we are running out of effective antibiotics due to the problem of antimicrobial resistance. So developing new alternative products that can replace the use and contribute to decrease the use of antimicrobials and the reliance on antimicrobials, it would be a good approach. And on that, the agency has published very recently a reflection paper that talks about the challenges, but also the opportunities in this area. And the fourth goal, and again, this applies both for the human domain and the veterinary domain, is to support research and innovation by enabling and supporting and collaborating with those that do work in research, such as you, and this is what we are doing here today, in a way. So we are often approached by researchers and consortia, and normally in the context of Horizon Europe. And I have put in the slide a few examples of some partnerships and some research projects in which we collaborate, normally providing advice, scientific advice. And the reason why we do this is because, the reason why they contact us is because, of course, they appreciate that we provide the pan-European perspective from as central EU regulators. And it is very important for us to participate as well in these research projects and to be aware of them and to increase the understanding of our role amongst the scientific community, particularly for the veterinary domain, and ensure, of course, these projects are very important because we rely on the expertise for academics and researchers like you, and it's very important to collaborate to advance in the field of regulatory science and also to work together to facilitate the translation of that science and that research into product development. Just here is just briefly to highlight that in the agency we have a procurement mechanism by which we can fund research. It's a small, we rely on a small budget, but we have some contractors in place that can deliver research projects for us in particular areas, strategic areas that can support our activities. And at the moment, within the current framework, we have 3 contractors, you can see there in the slide. 2 are from the Netherlands, and there is also a consortium from Utrecht University and the Faculty of Veterinary Medicine in Toulouse. And these colleagues can provide some research for us on areas supporting our work. And the current, I would like to say that the current procurement will expire in 2025, I think, and after that we will advertise again so people can actually apply to become contractors of the agency to undertake these studies. And as I said earlier, I didn't want to miss the opportunity to highlight the importance of One Health. One Health is pretty much, of course, recognizes the interconnection between humans, plants, animals, and the environment. This is not a new concept, but of course is becoming even more important since the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, and so on. And of course, it is very important in the veterinary domain because everything we do, as I tried to explain earlier, has impact on people and has an effect on people. And as I explained to you, is to ensure that the animals are healthy so that we can have food on the table, food security, that the food that we eat is safe, food safety, that we ensure the prudent use of medicines, including the prudent use of antimicrobials, so that we can fight against the antimicrobial resistance and make sure that those antibiotics remain effective, both for animals and people. We ensure healthy animals, not only food-producing animals, but also companion animals, so that we can all enjoy the benefits from living with our pets and the dogs and the cats and the benefits that that brings to society. And of course, we care for the environment, so we need to ensure that the medicines don't impact negatively on the environment and our ecosystems. And finally, of course, we contribute to make sure that the animals are not only healthy, but also we ensure the welfare of those animals by having medicines available to treat them. And I think that's my last slide is just to raise, if you are interested in our activities in the vet domain, and I think you should, because even if you didn't tick that you work on anything related with veterinary medicines, I'm sure that some of the research that you do is equally applicable to us. But so you can register, subscribe to our newsletter. It's a quarterly newsletter that provides information about our activities. Also, just to show that there is, we held an awareness day a few weeks ago, and that the recording is available. It's 2 full days of presentations that talk in much more depth in some of the issues that I brought up today to you. And then just to remind you that the 3rd Veterinary Big Data Stakeholder Forum is coming up on the 23rd November, and you are all invited. And with that, I will stop here. Just thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Anna, for that super interesting talk that made us very well aware of the importance of the regulation of veterinary medicines for human and public health. I think if we think about it, we would not know that, but we don't live with that awareness in our daily life. So thank you for your work, impressive. And I think we have time for one question, and I would like to ask a very interesting question that just came up regarding side effects. So humans can report their side effects to national agencies that monitor the pharmacovigilance. Is it possible to monitor the safety side effects in animals? And if yes, how do you do this?
Yes, of course, pharmacovigilance. We also have the monitoring of safety through pharmacovigilance activities in the agency in the veterinary domain. So, and I think the concept at high level applies is exactly the same. So the veterinarians, the farmers, the owners of the animals can report, and they are encouraged to report adverse events from medicines used in those animals, the same way as in the human domain. And this is a very, very important aspect of our work to ensure, as I said, that the benefit always outweighs the risk when we use medicines, not only prior to the authorization of the actual medicine, but also post-authorization. So that is monitored, and the side effects are reported.
Thank you very much. And I hand over to my colleague, Pier Paolo, who would introduce the next session.
Good morning also from my side. So first of all, I would like to say I'm very happy actually to co-chair this event because I come from academia. So I have worked in the academic sector for around 9-10 years. And I also had the opportunity to meet many of you during the poster session. And actually, I noticed a thing that is strictly related to the topic of this session. And I felt that many of you were very surprised to see how proactively we engage with developers, for instance. And the good thing is that we don't just proactively engage with developers, but we engage with a series and with a number of different stakeholders. And actually, I do remember, so during my studies, I had the chance to meet a Nobel laureate, and she was telling that science is not done in isolation, but you somehow, it benefits and it's necessary to have the interaction of different point of view, and it benefits from different minds that come together. And actually, this session is about stakeholder engagement, and this session is then about how we do not work in isolation and how your agency, as Tony said, does not work in isolation, but together. So I would like to introduce the speaker for this session, which is Ivana Silva. And Ivana Silva holds a Master in Pharmaceutical Science by the Faculty of Pharmacy of the Lisbon University, and then has a Master in Business Administration by the Portuguese Catholic University, and has worked at the agency for a long time, so since the 2010, and she's part of the stakeholders and public engagement team. So I would like to give the voice and the floor to Ivana Silver for the next talk.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Thank you, Pier Paolo, for the introduction. It's so nice to see so many of you and so young generation of very enthusiastic people. I hope I will be able to capture your attention and to share with you what we're doing to engage with different stakeholders. And to start with, it's always good to understand why. It's pretty obvious, you would imagine, but of course we do this because the agency goal, and you've seen now in the past two sessions what the agency is about, what its mission, how it's organized, that we cover human and veterinary medicines, but it's really about public service. And the agency is a public institution that services the public interest. And so we need to engage to ensure that our mission really is delivered. And we have to do that with the mind of a multi-stakeholder approach. So as Pier Paolo was saying, it's not in isolation, it's all of us together. And we are not, we don't know everything for sure, and we have to be open and to have an open mind to understand what's the outside world and what are the needs and bring those into the work we do. So that's our why. And we engage obviously for different reasons. We want to ensure that the decisions that are made by such a regulatory body are well informed, but they are also going into and responding to the needs and concerns of our stakeholders, and that actually reach our stakeholders. Because what's the point of doing all of this and then those who are impacted by our decisions are not aware? So that's one point for engaging. And as you will see, we engage with different types of stakeholders, with different types of organizations, and they really are amplifiers of our messages, but also the ones who are going to come and tell us, you're doing it not so well, or you can improve, or we are very happy with what you're doing. So we need to really open the different doors for stakeholders to come to us. We also need to engage because we want to access all the expertise that is out there. As I said, we don't know everything, and we need to bring experts all over Europe to come to us and to share with us their expertise, their knowledge, and to pick our brains. And also, we really engage to share and to create more awareness about what we do. This is a good example today to be here to create more awareness about what the agency does, how we work in a network with national agencies, and really how our work is evolving with times. Things are changing. There's more and more things happening. We have a new pharmaceutical legislation coming our way. How are these things going to be implemented? How is this going to impact the way we work? So we really need to create awareness about the different things that we do, how we do them, and how we can do them better with the support of the different stakeholders. And then by doing this, by being open, by bringing everyone on board, we really strive to promote confidence and trust on a regulatory activity and what we do and our decisions, so that everyone is quite confident that the systems that are in place are actually delivering and are sufficiently transparent. So that's the why. So, and who are we trying to reach out? So there are different types of stakeholders, and this is not an exhaustive list. And for example, I have to say that it's mainly looking on the right side to patients and consumers and to healthcare professionals, but we also have the veterinarian stakeholders, so the representatives of farmers and animal owners. So all of that is encapsulated, and we establish contacts with all different types of stakeholders. But there's been kind of a path that we've done, a journey that we've done since the inception of the agency in '95. Of course, interacting with stakeholders was a must, and we've step by step created very specific, very concrete frameworks on how we structure those interactions. And you can see in the slide on your left side, we have first, we started with a framework of interaction with patient and consumers and their organizations. They really were very vocal and really helped the agency to establish very structured ways of bringing the input of patients and their representative organizations on the work of the agency. We also have currently, and since 2011, a specific framework of interacting with healthcare professionals and their organizations and clinical learned societies. And here we have organizations representing, of course, different clinical specialties, pharmacists, nurses, dentists. We also have, of course, a framework of interaction with the industry associations. So we, of course, work with the individual companies. They are the ones who come and bring applications for authorization of new medicines, but then they have a non-profit representative organizations, and those are the ones I'm talking about at this level. And we have also, of course, academia, and I know Maribel is going to expand in the next session on that. But so these are 4 key groups that we look at. But then there's many others. Of course, we live in a world where we have to work with the media. And so this is a very important stakeholder for the agency. HTA bodies and payers, ethic committees, clinical research organizations, tech developers, so you name it. We just need to be open and always have not just to be proactive in reaching out to these stakeholders, but also we are very lucky that the stakeholders from different perspectives also come and knock on our door, which is very good for us. So we have all these different stakeholders, but our approach is really to by design, consider multi-stakeholder engagement, because by experience, what we've seen is that bringing everyone around the table is what really moves the needle. And that's why we really design our different activities with this purpose, to have everybody around the table, to have the perspectives from patients, from healthcare professionals, from academia, from industry, from other stakeholders on board. And this is very important to help the implementation of the European Medicines Agency's network strategy. This is where we have our strategic goals defined for a particular period of time, and also the regulatory science research needs. So there are very fundamental strategic areas that we really look at engaging the stakeholders from all the different angles. And then that will also help us to identify whether we have to be more targeted regarding specific activities and have more specific interactions with different stakeholder groups. But the spirit is always everyone around the table. And that's what I wanted to say in this slide. What I also wanted to clarify, because it's often a question that is put to us, is how about other agencies? How about interaction at international level? What happens there? How does the agency positions itself? And here we have this kind of difference between stakeholders and partners. And partners are those institutions that are somehow having operational links with the agency. So part of the work of the agency is linked to their work. And here we have, from the perspective of the European Regulator Network, we have, of course, the national competent authorities, the agencies that work at different member states. We have the European Commission, and we have the European Parliament, so all the different European institutions and other agencies. So we call it our sister agencies. So the European Environment Agency, for example, the European Food Safety Agency, and you have others named in the slide. So we need to be aware of each other's work, because there are points of contact and there are things that are important, and we share in many occasions the same stakeholders for different purposes, but we share the stakeholders. And then from an international perspective, we obviously collaborate and are very in close contact with the World Health Organization, with other regional agencies such as the FDA in the US, but also Health Canada and the Japanese authorities. So again, we are not in isolation. Now, this is a bit of a busy slide, but the intention here is to share with you how we engage the different stakeholders from a very wide perspective to a more specific decision-making angle. And here you see that we have this kind of inverted triangle where we have very different activities for public engagement overall. And here we include, for example, open consultations, we include public hearings, we include sessions like this one, which are being broadcast. So we really want to be as wide as possible. Then we have multi-stakeholder events. Again, this idea of having an approach where all different stakeholders are around the table to discuss, to share ideas on a particular theme. And here we develop workshops, for example, and we have different stakeholders coming. Then we have specific dialogue platforms, and here the examples are the Patient and Consumers Working Party, the Healthcare Professionals Working Party, and there's a standing group for industry as well. And you can read more about it in our dedicated web pages. I'm happy, I will stick around for the coffee break as well, so if you want to learn a little bit more about that, I'm happy to exchange with you. But just that you know that there are formalized structures within the agency which meet on a regular basis, which have a specific composition where representatives of European organizations come on a regular basis to discuss very specific topics. And then we have, of course, a very, very core activity of engagement is within the all the processes that we have for evaluation of medicines at all different stages, from very early stages to post evaluation. We have very well established processes to include patient input and healthcare professional input. We also have participation of representatives of patients and healthcare professionals in advisory structures. And this includes, just to give an example, the Medicine Shortages Steering Group. There are more that are in the slide. And also we have a representation of healthcare professionals and patients in decision-making structures of the agency. This includes the scientific committees and also includes the management board of the European Medicines Agency. So as you can see, there are very different stages of engagement, and we take this very seriously. So what's the impact? We do all of this, and what do we see? I wanted to share with you different dimensions of where we can see impact. We can see impact obviously in the specific area of medicines evaluation, where we see, for example, the fact that having a patient coming to a scientific advice discussion and providing input on some of the suggested questions, some of the suggested endpoints, and then seeing that because of that, the company may reconsider certain aspects of the clinical design, that is extremely important. Then you see from a strategic perspective, I've mentioned the strategic documents that somehow guide the agency and the regulatory network on their way forward. And these include also not only development stages and public consultations, and this is very important for the agency to really listen to all the different stakeholders when shaping these very important strategic documents. And the same goes for policies. And we have examples such as the transparency of clinical trials that you might have heard. And so when developing all these policies that will really impact how the agency works, we really want to have the input from different stakeholders, and we give the opportunity to have public consultations so that we bring on board those aspects. We have dedicated workshops, and so we shape the final policies. From an operational perspective, we also engage with different stakeholders, those who are more critically impacted by different operational systems. And the case of the clinical trial information system is one. And we had specific engagement activities where we also do user testing, for example. So that is also part of the, and that makes the systems then more workable. And the point is they have to be useful for those who are going to use it. And then the last one, and I'm going to elaborate on the next slide, is about crisis management. We've just came out of a very dark period where we really had to revisit how to work as individuals, but also as organizations. And we've seen the fact that really having established already good engagement practices really helped to face the pandemic, the need for quicker development of vaccines and therapeutics, and also to quickly communicate to the public and those who are in the front line of care of patients. So this really, everything what I've explained, it's very nice in peace times, but when we have challenges, we have crises, we really have to have the concrete means of creating this engagement, and if it's already there, it's just a quicker pace. And so to conclude, and also in relation to the impact during crisis management, I just wanted to mention that to gather critical input into crisis-related activities in the specific context of COVID-19 was easier because we had established contacts with different organizations, and we could easily bring that input. We were able to gain more insights because we could listen to our stakeholders, we could understand what the concerns were, and we could be supported by them in passing across important messages to clarify what was going on and to provide more information on the different types of activities that were being made by the agency. And in the end, to create additional transparency and reinforce the confidence that the public will have in the activities of the agency. So I think that's it. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope if you have any questions, I will be able to answer them. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Ivana, and I'm quite sure that during the coffee break, there will be less surprise about how proactively we engage with stakeholders. So don't forget to, let's say, ask your question through the Slido. I give a try, actually. Is there any brave one in the room that would like to raise the hands and switch on the mic and ask a question? I don't see any hand. Okay, I tried. And then I might have a question, which it comes still from the poster discussion, and I felt a lot of people were curious to know whether we engage with the other medicines regulatory authorities like FDA, and you mentioned already, of course, we do it, but could you give us one concrete example, for instance, of in which terms we really practically engage with FDA and also with the WHO?
Okay, this is the area of our international affairs colleagues, but to give you an example, there are very specific, there are agreements, first of all, with the different regional agencies, so that there is a possibility to exchange information between the different institutions. So there are very specific agreements for that. And on that basis, and for example, with FDA, we have developed ways of working where we have, for example, there is a colleague of ours at the agency that goes to the FDA and is currently in the FDA, and it's our liaison person, so to follow all the activities at the level of the FDA. And equally, we have an FDA colleague who is here working with us and liaising on all the aspects related with the activities of the FDA and the EMA. We collaborate on areas of medicine regulation, and we have also specific clusters. For example, we have a cluster on patient engagement where colleagues from FDA and EMA are exchanging the practices. What are we doing? How are we doing it? How does this apply in the specific different contexts of our regional areas? So that's an example. With WHO, of course, WHO specifically in the aspects related with preparedness, but also, as Anna has mentioned, in the area of One Health approach, there's a lot of exchanges with WHO. And again, this is always based on specific agreements so that information exchange can happen in a way which is appropriate, and that we are not providing or sharing information that shouldn't be shared in other way. So I hope that answers the question.
I'm sure it did. So thank you again. And I think we have the coffee break now. So we will be back then at 11:30, although in the agenda is 11:20, but of course we are slightly not in time. But so we meet back at 11:30 for the next session on innovation. Thank you.
Everybody, welcome back. I will be moderating this session, and by way of introduction, I will compliment the team who organized this workshop for actually putting me in charge of moderating this session. Very daring exercise on my first week at the agency. So thank you very much for putting me on the spot on the first week. I appreciate that. But I do so very gladly. And the reason why is, in the context of innovation, I've been since last week or before last week very much in the field of innovation as an innovator. I started in academia, worked in SMEs, non-for-profit, and large pharmaceutical company. So in that light, I do bring a lot of understanding of what it takes to be an innovator, but also maybe more importantly here, the maybe sometimes lack of understanding of what it takes to be a regulator. And I think that's something I've learned throughout my career, and I hope that you will feel the same at the end of this session, is when you talk to regulators or when you think of regulation, it's not at the end of the process. You as innovators should think early on what it means to put your innovation where it matters for the patient or animals for development of medicines, novel medicines. So if you are ambitioning to develop something that matters in the field of medicine, then you have to think of regulation. And that's something that you do early on in the process. The way you start will most likely drive the way you finish. So by having that correct understanding, and you'll be positioning yourself better to success. And I also learned throughout my career that working with a regulator is not just a collaboration, it's actually a partnership. We have to work hand in hand to make this a success. As much as you are key pillars in the world of innovation, we are also enablers of that innovation. So take us as partners, not just collaborators. So I think with this guiding principle, I think you could keep these in mind, at least for the day, but also for the future. And looking at this session, I think we are lucky because I'm also learning in the process as you are. I was hoping to be sitting in one of these chairs and enjoy the show, but I'm very much enjoying the show. And I also discover colleagues at the same time as you discover people from the agency, so that's very nice as well in that light. But you will have three very experienced member of our agency who will present the work we're doing on the innovation space. So I hope that you will take something out of these presentations, that innovation is not an afterthought in terms of regulatory mindset, but very much the core of our strategy when we talk about what we want to develop toward as an agency. So without taking too much time, because I realize we've already taken extra time, I will leave the floor to Maribel, who will be talking about in more details, and let me just get my notes straight here, on the type of engagement we have with academia. And Maribel has an interesting profile, and like all the speakers you will hear today, I've heard so far today, I really encourage you to look at the profiles just to give you a good appreciation of the diversity of backgrounds when it comes to individual working in the agency. So please do so. This is very inspirational, at least for me it has been. But Maribel has a very good and interesting profile, both as I was going to say more a scientist side of things, but also in the world of law, as a legal expert, if you will, in that field. So Maribel is currently a seconded national expert in the organization, and her role is mostly focused on academia liaison. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Emmanuel. And in the name of the entire task force, if I may, welcome. And we are very happy to have your experience and fresh views to guide our work and actions. Hello, everyone. Maribel Rico. I am the academia liaison, and I am going to explain in more detail how we interact with the academic sector or our academic stakeholders. My colleague Ivana had explained in the previous section how we engage in general with all of our stakeholders, in particular patients and healthcare professionals. And I will deepen into the academic sector, which is the subject that concerns us today. And I don't know if I can move this. Is this working? Yeah. So at the IMA, we define the academic sector as the non-for-profit organizations and its representatives pursuing education and research in all fields relevant to the work of IMA. This is an important and wide definition, and an important tool for interacting with the academic sector is the academia liaison, which is a team that is behind this name. And this is your standing contact point for interaction with the IMA in the framework of collaboration with academia, which was approved by the Executive Board of the IMA in the year 2017. The framework of collaboration with academia comprises 4 main ways of interaction: information, consultation, involvement, and cooperation. We inform you through dedicated pages, relevant news items, questions and answers, information days such as this one, and information materials that we produce. We also consult the academic sector regarding our policies, our guidance, and we also consult through surveys. We involve the academic sector in meetings, workshops, conferences, and in the development of regulatory guidelines, and cooperate with the academic sector on research projects, education, and training, in particular with established European networks. The academia liaison has 3 main areas or lines of activity. The first one would be research, innovation, and communication and training. Research, of course, on regulatory science through project collaboration and also advising to funding organizations. For innovation, we offer academia briefings, which are meetings, interactions with developers. We have and offer incentives in pilot programs specifically catered to the academic sector. Communication and training, we of course address all of your information requests. We deliver targeted communication and organize events such as this today. Research, it's of course on regulatory science, but what is regulatory science? Here we have the standing definition. Regulatory science is all the range of scientific disciplines that are applied to the assessment of quality, safety, and efficacy of medicinal products, and also those that inform regulatory decision-making throughout the life cycle of medicine. It encompasses basic and applied biomedical and social sciences and contributes, very importantly, to the development of regulatory standards and tools. For the sake of regulatory science, the EMA engages in a virtuous cycle with academic developers, providing regulatory support for translating academic research into novel methodologies and medicines, and getting in exchange the best expertise and research available to improve our practice. We collaborate in the context of our regulatory science research needs, which are gaps in regulatory knowledge. EMA published the regulatory science research needs in the year 2021, seeking to stimulate researchers to address these regulatory knowledge gaps, and also funding institutions to provide the resources for researchers to address these regulatory knowledge gaps, because the learnings from science and technology evolve the regulatory framework. So it's very important to advance knowledge in how we can assess the quality, efficacy, and safety of medicines, especially for the most innovative ones. The regulatory science research needs were identified going through the 5 main goals of the regulatory science strategy. My colleague Anna explained earlier which were the 5 main goals of the regulatory science strategy, if you remember the slide. And by analyzing these goals, the committee that identified these needs found over 100 topics for research. So please, if you are a researcher, have a look at this publication that you can see the link in the bottom of the slide. Maybe you are already working on regulatory science research needs. As I explained earlier, we also collaborate on research projects and networks, and contribute our advice to funding institutions. In this slide, you can see a few examples of the projects we are currently participating and collaborating with. All this research and collaboration is coordinated internally through the Academia Matrix Group, which is a group of colleagues, trans-agency colleagues that exchange information regarding new developments and regulatory science research needs, and establish and define deliverables to address actions that have been agreed on the regulatory science strategy. For innovation, we offer a certain service. We are very well aware of the innovative potential of the European academic sector. In this slide, you can see the production of novel potential solutions for medical needs. These are patents. These are patent applications in between the years 2017 and 2022. We can see over 3,000 patents, patent applications that come from the academic sector only. These patent applications do not have any industry collaboration or inventor. They are in the fields of gene therapy, immunotherapy, small molecules, and diagnosis. We as regulators don't see most of these potential solutions. Normally, these patents would get transferred to industry and come to us through the hand, by the hand of a SME, a startup. But still, less than 1% of these solutions made it. In the technology transfer field, it is known that these solutions are hard to transfer to industry, mostly because they are not well aligned with regulatory standards, and thus it is perceived as a high risk for industrial investors. But all of these research solutions of these academic solutions could be lost, or could be improved and maybe more aligned with regulatory standard if the researchers contact the IMA. You can contact us, and we could offer, depending on the advancement of your research and the topic, we could offer academia briefing meetings where we would discuss with you and explain your regulatory pathway options. Here you can see different options for developing early stage medical technologies. You could access the Innovation Task Force, or you could interact with the ATMP orphan designation, and you could access different programs that we offer. For example, we have interacted with academics, such as research networks. Here there's an anonymized identification because we can, of course, not disclose, but with research networks, with European consortiums to understand how and if we could integrate the project results in our regulatory practice and recommendations. And normally we interact with research teams to provide assistance and support for understanding the regulatory system for developing an innovative product for the treatment of different diseases. We offer also incentives and pilot programs. Our programs for orphan and procedures for orphan and prime that will be explained in detail in the next talk by my colleague Ralph. They both comprise specific support to the academic sector. So if you come with an orphan medicine, you would get specific incentives, and also if you come as with a priority medicine. We also collaborate in programs for repurposing of authorized medicines. Here we offer to the academic sector scientific advice, but if you are admitted to join the pilot, which is actually currently closed, but so you would obtain scientific advice throughout the development of your repurposing medicine. We also collaborate on the pilot for development of advanced medicinal products. And here, the academic sector that has been selected to participate in this pilot, it's offered free scientific advice, inspections, and also incentives for marketing authorization application. The new fee regulation will bring further incentives for scientific advice to a broader stakeholder sector, which is the non-for-profit organizations, which includes, of course, the academic sector. And also in the new pharma regulation, we expect to have a provision of incentive specific to the non-for-profit organizations. So, as you see at the IMA, we are trying to get closer to the academic sector and align the research on public health and medicines with regulatory standards in order to actually potentiate their translational character. In communication and training, we, of course, address all of your information requests. You can write and send a question to the IMA. If you are an academic, we will answer the question, whatever it is, and we'll try to help you with your doubts and requests. There's the link down there, and you can also write to us at this academia@ima.europa.eu. We provide targeted communication. This is a communication that is catered to your interests. In order to receive this type of information, you should be registered. We register the academic sector, which are these type of organizations that you see in the slide. Some are consortia or public organizations, such as public hospitals, non-profit or research organizations, such as research institutes, higher education establishments, all of the public universities, and international research organizations, such as the MBO or the European Space Agency. The organizations are registered in our database by invitation. So if you write to us, you provide your contact information, and we will send you an invitation to fill up a formulary with your interests. And you will have access to our targeted communication. You can also register as an individual scholar if you are an academic professional. You can. There's a link in our website, in our academia website, that you can fill up, and then we will validate you, and you will be in our database. That way, you can access information regarding collaborations, fee reductions, incentives, informal consultations. You could be invited to be a speaker in a workshop and receive our targeted communication. We also organize training events, often in collaboration with networks and academic institutions, such as the workshop on RNA medicines that was launched on January 2023, and the training on advanced medicinal products in collaboration with IATRIS. And this is the work of the Academia Liaison. I hope you found it interesting, and you would like to engage with us and write to us with your questions. And if there are questions here now, I'll be happy to answer.
So Maribel, many thanks for this presentation. It was nice to see the engagement strategy outlined, but also to be reminded of the significant contribution of academia in the innovation space. So thanks a lot. We will keep the question for the last presentation, after the last presentation. So I will encourage you to input your question into the Slido. I believe the link has been shared again. Yes? Okay. So we'll move on to the next presentation by Ralph. And we will talk to you a little bit more details on some of the tools and maybe program associated to academic developers. Ralph has been in the organization for quite some time, since 2007, and Ralph has a medical degree and is a certified pediatrician as well as a PhD in experimental research. So a nice combination, very relevant to the work we're doing. So without further ado, Ralph, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel, and I'm excited to be talking to you now about certain programs for academic developers. We want to go a little bit more granular. Some you have already mentioned, heard mentioning by name, and I want to give you the perspective how this relates to perhaps innovations you're thinking of, you're working on, you have seen, and how they could be connected to activities at the European Medicines Agency. I have the pleasure to be talking from you from the workstream Regulatory Science and Academia. And in this workstream, we provide a level of support and coordination, both within the agency to the various colleagues and activities that are interfacing with colleagues from the academic sector, but also externally, as Maribel has just explained. So this is really exciting for me, and I worked in some of these areas, but on the other hand, I'm now really happy that we can talk about what is in the future and comes out of perhaps a form of interaction or enticing you to bring more to the agency. The agenda is briefly that I will go through these programs, and all of these have in common that they address unmet needs. And you have heard this term before, but for us, it's one of the drivers to understand that what we are doing has a purpose in addressing unmet medical needs and veterinary health needs. I've selected those that are of interest to academia, to my understanding. I want to flag opportunities for you as innovators, developers, and for some, I want to share a perspective of how it looks like as a staff member involved in these activities. And we'll cover these 5 activities. They these activities and programs span out over the what we call life cycle of medicine or medicinal products. And I've just taken the most abstract arrow you can see here on the screen, going from left to right, research development to marketing authorization, and then activities during the time of marketing. The times are indicative, meaning from the bottom, orphan designation, pediatric medicine development discussions, advanced therapy, etc. Don't take the sequence or the distance as an absolute term, but they just give you an idea of what are typical undertakings where developers are interfacing with the European Medicines Agency. Sometimes they also have to. There are legal requirements. These are in red here to make it very clear. And this includes the pediatric medicine development, but then also later on checking if the medicine is suitable to be managed as a centrally authorized medicine. So this is thus the high-level big picture, and I think you find the topics that we mentioned earlier mapped out here, but again, it's just one way of showing it, and for a given medicine, the arrows often are in different order or sequence, and some are not necessary. So let's have a look at the priority medicine scheme. This is a scheme that is open, and it has the very important purpose to address public health needs that are persistent and prevailing, and to provide extra support to medicines that have the potential to address this unmet need to a significant extent. And these words that I'm using are criteria in these programs. So we're putting them here on the screen because they come back if you're interested to propose your medicine as a priority medicine. We will ask you, tell us about where it has the potential and might be addressing the unmet medical need to a significant extent. Assuming that this is then clear to us and that we have agreed that this is a priority medicine, then what is provided is reinforced scientific and regulatory advice. The dose makes the difference. This is scientific advice that is proactively given to developers, where at the beginning of this arrow of research and development, we are setting out a plan for engaging with regulators at certain milestones to discuss elements in the development of that priority medicine that will benefit from discussing the challenges and opportunities, the evolving data, and so on. And this all with the purpose to facilitate the authorization and further development of this medicine to be then leading to becoming a new treatment for patients. So here again, you have this research and development arrow in the middle. And the important aspect for you today is that we have different entry criteria, and for small, medium enterprises and developers from the academic sector, the left box, the proof of principle data are expected to be brought by you to argue that this is a priority medicine. And then the bottom part kicks off that there is a dedicated EMA contact, that there is an early rapporteur appointment, and then scientific advices are offered and are actually also free of cost. So this is the priority medicine scheme. It has been developed. We have been running it for 6.5, 7 years. And there is a report out there, and we want to make you aware of it and that you consider that this would be a big way to address unmet needs in the European Union. Let's have a look at the orphan medicines. This is a program that exists much longer, early after the years 2000. The legislator recognized that patients are suffering from rare diseases and that also medicines should be developed and stimulated to be developed for these patients. There are more than 10,000 rare diseases, most of which do not have any medical treatment or medicine for treatment so far. So incentives were introduced so that these products can more readily be picked up by developers, and that developers are casting an eye on how, with their pipeline of discovery and early development, they could address unmet needs of orphan diseases, of patients with an orphan disease. And we have a specific legal framework for this because the European legislator said we need a policy, and then the policy has been introduced as a legal framework to address these unmet needs. For orphan medicines, there are criteria, again, that would need to be argued, for example, that the disease targeted is in fact an orphan disease, the so-called prevalence criterion, and a number of other aspects that need to be addressed, such as the medical plausibility. This medicine is plausibly a treatment or a preventative treatment of this orphan disease. And then at the bottom, again, our incentives are the benefits for developers that do turn to these rare diseases, the small market, the difficult to research population. And these developers benefit from pre-authorization incentives. They're listed here. They are typically fee reductions and special type of scientific advice. And these fee reductions are what we can offer in particular, where we can make a reduction so that there is the lowest possible hurdle for developers to come and engage. And on the right bottom side, this continues into the post-authorization area, because the orphan medicine that has achieved marketing authorization should then also become available throughout the European Union. And for every medicine, there are fees and post-authorization activities required. And here we are trying to help and make it possible. If you work in the Orphan Medicines Office, headed by Christina, who spoke earlier today, this is what you would do. As a scientist, you support the committee in judging these applications for orphan designation. You're contributing to protocol assistance, the scientific advice. And the colleagues in the Orphan Office also do a lot of outreach activities and engagement with external stakeholders, specifically in orphan medicines. So this is a good part, and therefore quite a big box here on that screen. Let's move on to medicines for the pediatric population. Children are around 20% of the whole European Union's population. And this is the starting point, in addition to examples in the past when medicines were harming children, for the European legislator to create a special policy and then also legislation that came into force in 2007 to pay attention that medicines are equally tested in children where relevant. And this includes testing for harms, but also testing for efficacy, because children do have different diseases. And even cancers, and that's my background, pediatrics and cancer, are not the same in adults as in children, even if they may have the same name. So you can see here how the legislator combined all this into the main objectives to increase the research, high quality, ethical, into medicines for children, to increase the availability, so incentives again are provided, and to increase the information so that the health professionals know what they are doing when they are using these medicines. So this means that we, as the agency, had then to implement in 2007 these activities, and the Pediatric Medicine Office here at the agency on the left-hand side provides for support to the scientific and regulatory procedures with these activities, and the Pediatric Investigation Plan is a really important tool for you to be aware of. It is a scientific discussion about the development needs and the development potential of medicines for children, and it's mandatory for all new medicines. And similar to the orphan colleagues, the Pediatric Medicines Office colleagues also work with external stakeholders. In fact, we undertake a whole network of research networks, so we're networking the networks, where we are trying to improve the clinical research infrastructure across the European Union and beyond. And again, do outreach activities with external stakeholders. Innovation can also come in repurposing authorized medicine. For example, these are medicines that have already been marketed and authorized in a certain indication. Safety data have been collected, but it turns out because the discovery of, let's say, a target structure, a molecular feature, a cell surface receptor, that this medicine might also become a treatment or a diagnostic for quite a new disease. That is the evolution of science, and I think you're contributing to that. So in these situations, we would talk about repurposing authorized medicine. And again, the policy idea is that there should be support to academic researchers and not-for-profit stakeholders who want to develop authorized medicines also to address these unmet needs of further discovered potential new indications. This is already an ongoing pilot, and it was mentioned that the pilot was launched, and the pilot means that certain candidates were selected, and this is now ongoing. So as a joint activity of the European Commission, top left symbol, the European Medicines Agency, and the EU Network of Medicines Regulatory Authorities, the HMA, we are now supporting champions that have a repurposing idea and data, and we provide them with scientific advice at the EU and at the national level. This is ongoing. We're currently not looking for new champions, but still, if you have such repurposing ideas, please contact our workstream, as Maribel has said, or consider engaging with these two bottom Horizon Europe consortia that have recently started in 2022 and that are REPO4EU and Remedy for All. And these specifically provide an infrastructure for repurposing medicines. And I think there's also a repurposing concierge that may be interested to hear about further ideas. So last but certainly not least, advanced therapy medicinal products are one of these schemes that we have to support innovation. So this could be gene therapy medicines, somatic cell therapy medicines, or tissue engineered medicines. And since this is both a broad variety and a high research driven and quick innovation cycling area of medicine and treatment development, we provide a lot of support on our website. I've put the link here and you will have the slides afterwards. And the support goes into the questions, what data do I need to generate? This is good clinical practice, but good manufacturing practice and good laboratory practice requirements are as well spelled out in detail for example, ATMP, CAR T-cell developers to have a look at as a starting point. Maribel, you also already mentioned the EATRIS webinar. So this is one of the ways to support the development of safe and efficacious advanced therapy medicinal products. Because we are aware that not all the medicines that are offered to patients have the quality and safety attributes, the agency had in the past years given this advice here that I recap from our website, that for cell therapies, we're encouraging health professionals and patients to ask these questions about the risks and benefits of cell therapies that have not gone through our support and authorization procedure, because it's important to understand that certain cell products are of different quality and safety and efficacy, and that with the advice here on the screen, it will be possible for patients and for health professionals to consider which ones they find interesting for their own treatment or not. But your role is, of course, to think of how could the future CAR T-cell look like, what are the constructs that need to be put into the plasmids, and scientific details that I don't really fully yet grasp myself. But because that requires an interaction, we want to learn from you, and you want to hear from our experience. We are offering this pilot for academia and not-for-profit organizations to propose the ATMPs, the advanced therapy medicinal products, and we have certain support, again, scientific advice that will be helpful for the developers, and we are coordinating this across the agency. So to finish up, what I've just presented is the work of multiple teams on multiple floors of this building and also beyond, if we think of our colleagues in the national competent authorities. The teams at the EMA that are working together for each of these programs are listed here. The programs are concerning the therapeutic areas with the various offices, the scientific evidence generation department, the state quality and safety department. And on the right-hand side, we in our task forces, in the task force data analytics, in our task force regulated science and innovation, we provide an infrastructure that binds these together and that supports the innovation to become a reality for and delivery for patients. So with that, I want to finish and show that in 2022, it was possible to recommend quite a number of medicines. And it's too small print to see, but there are 6 advanced therapy medicinal products, for example, a couple of orphan medicinal products. And please have a look at this report. And the small color dots indicate you that often the programs that I mentioned come together. So there is a prime designated medicine addressing an orphan medical need, and it is, of course, then also perhaps an ATMP. And that, I think, is the exciting picture. We want to work with you and get you to work with us to have more such medicines with many colorful dots and develop this together. So thank you very much, and that completes my presentation. Back to you.
Ralph, thank you very much, and I actually very much appreciate your conclusion. It's a two-way street. We need to learn from you, you need to learn from us, and that's how we'll move the needle faster. So thanks a lot. We're going to move to the next presentation from Valentina. I would like to remind you before we start, please put your question in the Slido, and we'll go over this question after Valentina's presentation. Valentina is a fairly recent addition to the agency. She started in 2022, and she has a PhD in cancer biology. She is currently working as a scientist specialist in the Regulatory Science and Innovation Task Force, of course, but with a focus on Innovation and Development Accelerator, which I think is a new terminology we're bringing in the group. I like the terminology accelerator. It particularly resonates often with academia, where often accelerators are connected to academic development for sure. So please go ahead. Your presentation relates to additional efforts in the context of innovation and how we manage to engage further with academia in that space. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. And yes, thank you all for being here. So what I would like to discuss with you today in these 20 minutes that we have ahead is how, in practice, we support you and other developers to bring your innovation forward. So if we think about the journey of innovation, you've seen this slide in different forms throughout the morning. I try to make it very simple and try to locate you in this journey of innovation. So the journey of innovation will start with an idea, and then you have this idea, and then you go into the lab and you gather data to support your idea. So basically for the ones of you who work in the lab, who are researchers, you are trying to gather at least proof of concept data. And this type of data will allow you to have, for example, your first publication, your preliminary result to write a grant to continue your research. But of course, the question is, how do I bring my idea, my innovation, my new therapy to patients? The journey is quite long. So then you will have to move forward and gather additional preclinical data. So it's not only about efficacy, it's about also safety. So you will have to get toxicology data, for example, in vivo models. And then, yes, it's all nice, it works, but yeah, to give my medicine to patients, I will also need to manufacture my medicine in a way that is safe for patients. It needs to be upscaled. And then we can start the clinical trials. And only after clinical trials, you can ask for a marketing authorization approval. So it's a very long way. And what is most important here is that you cannot do this alone. Early dialogue between you, so the innovators, and the regulators is fundamental, because we would like to avoid that you come here too late and then, oops, I have to go back and redo my in vivo experiments. So that's what we're trying to do here. You already heard it from Maribel. You have your dedicated entry point for academics. But what about the actual discussion about my product, my technology? So this is the EMA version of the journey of innovation. So how the EMA supports the developers across the journey. So starting from idea proof of concept, and reaching the marketing authorization application. And even afterwards, we have post-authorization activities. I will focus to the very first one, the one highlighted in yellow. So the Innovation Task Force, where I'm currently working. And why is
an innovation task force or activity related to innovation, why are they important and why do we do this type of activities here? So our role has two main goals. So the first one on top you see is support medicine and technology development. Not by doing research. We don't have labs, we don't do research here. But what we do, we offer dialogue. So we open our doors in a very informal way at very early stage. And what we try to do is provide an initial guidance and also to prepare the medicine developer, the innovator, for the subsequent procedures that they will have to undergo. But we also work to improve not only the agency, the AMA, but also the network that we work closely with. Because by having all this contact with developers, I am quite lucky. I have a sneak peek of all the most innovative approach you cannot even imagine. We try to gather all this data to collect trends and technologies so that we can tell our colleagues within the agency, all the assessors in the networks, hey, this new technology is coming our way. The new medicinal product will have this type of viral vectors. They will have this type of molecules. So we need to know what type of expertise we need. So our main services is the Innovation Task Force briefing meeting. So you will hear it as ITF briefing meeting. And what we offer is just a platform where what we offer is a dialogue. So the dialogue can be on an innovative medicinal product. Imagine you're developing your stem cell therapy or your new gene therapy, your new antibody, but also a technology. It could be, for example, an organ on a chip. And it's a preparatory dialogue. It's informal. So let's say in a setup like this, with several experts across Europe, the discussion will last for about 1 hour and a half and is free of charge. And of course, you are now wondering, yes, how do I apply for this? How does this work? So the applicant can contact us by sending a request form. It's on our website. It's a 3-page form. And then the ITF team, so together with my colleagues, we will assess the form, trying to understand, okay, can we address this topic or not? And most of the cases, we ask for additional information in order also to select the correct experts, to inform the experts so they are prepared to discuss with the applicant. And at the end, we always try to give a response. So it's either your request is suitable for an ITF briefing meeting, or if it's not suitable, we try to guide the applicant towards the most appropriate procedure. It could be another procedure within the agency. It could be a referral, for example, to the national competent authority. So which type of developments are we open to? I would say everything, as long as it's innovative and it's related to a medicine development. So it could be an emerging therapies, gene therapy, cellular therapy, or tissue engineering, but also methods. So we are really looking forward to receive information on methodologies related to the 3 Rs. So replacement, refinement, and reduction of animals, for example, but also novel methodology of clinical trials, delivery systems, also digital technologies, and, for example, platform approaches for the development of a multiple medicinal product at the same time. So these are just examples. And who is the applicant talking to? When they come at this ITF briefing meeting, who will they discuss their development with? So there is, of course, the ITF team, so my colleagues. There are members from the EMA committees and working parties, but also experts from the national competent authorities, so from the 27 member states. And we will also select any needed expertise based on the topic. If the applicant will ask us if any other regulator outside Europe could join the meeting, we will just contact our colleagues. And if the applicant agrees, of course, we had in the past also meetings where colleagues from Swissmedic were present, so from the Swiss regulatory agency, but also Health Canada and sometimes the FDA, if the applicant has already in mind that probably they would like to interact with such authorities in the future. So here, this is just a very general and broad overview, just to give you a flavor of all the variety of topics that we have seen in 2022. So the topics go from the preclinical, non-clinical field, so the genome editing, but they move throughout the medicine development. So we had discussions also of innovative methodology of clinical trials, the use of novel biomarkers and omics, the implementation of digital healthcare, and also some associated medical devices. So what we are trying to do with all this data that we gather from all the interaction we have throughout the year is to monitor which are the new technology that we should be aware of and that we will hopefully see in the coming years coming towards our way. So when we ask the applicant to fill in the request form, we also ask the applicant, can you please tell us what are the enabling technologies behind your innovation? And with enabling technology, we think about these novel promising technologies that actually will have the potential to enable innovation. So they are behind the innovative character of your medicinal product. And these are the top 20 that we collected in 2022, and I color-coded them according to 3 main domains. So on the non-clinical development, we had like a lot of interaction related to genome editing and genetically modified organisms. On the clinical part, there was a lot of discussion on the implementation of large data sets, so omic data sets and novel biomarkers, but also on the methodology side on different type of clinical trials design, but also the use of real-world data. So now you might wonder, okay, but probably these are companies, you know, they're a little bit more organized, they know what to do. Well, actually, if we take a look of how many interactions we had last year, so we had 35 ITF briefing meetings in 2022, and 1/3 of these meetings were held with applicants from the academic sector. So in blue, you see academia, so researchers coming from university across Europe, but we have also a number of consortia, so EU-funded consortia, where academic partners were present and sometimes even applying on behalf of the consortium. Now, I give you a little bit of theory, a little bit of background of what we do. I will conclude this talk, this last part of my talk, by giving you concrete examples. Of course, these concrete examples are a bit generalized and anonymized because you have to know that whatever will be discussed within the AMA in general, but also especially with us in the Innovation Task Force, will stay completely confidential. We do not publish anything on our website. We know how is important for you to keep your data safe. So nothing will be disclosed outside these walls. So you can be reassured that whatever is discussed with us will stay within the regulators. So I will start with the very first one. And I took this example because we had an academic applicant that reached out to us because they were developing a new gene therapy for a neurological disorder. And they said, we are the proof of concept. We saw that the therapy seems to work in mice, but now we have done our job in the university, we really don't know what to do next. So the 2 enabling technology they have indicated are, of course, genome editing, but also nanotechnologies. And then you can see which type of topics they discuss with us. So the type of gene therapy delivery. So they said, we are focusing on one, but we are not sure is the most optimal. We are thinking about also other type of deliveries. And in this case, the discussion went a little bit on the benefit risks on the different choices in order to give the applicant a little bit of a broader picture. But also there was a general discussion on the preclinical strategy. So which type of data could be expected, what they should focus on in terms of priorities. Let's switch gears a little bit. It was not me, I hope. Lucia, can you bring it back? We'll go back like this. Yes, perfect. So let's switch gears, and with this second example, I bring here an example coming from a small company, again at the preclinical stage. And what the company was developing was in vivo bioprinting of cells. So they say we're working with this biomaterial, is a cell and tissue engineering product, but we actually have like some substantial question, like first, how is our product classified? We know we take cells from the patient, we expand them, and then we want to in vivo bioprint them to reconstruct an organ or a tissue after surgery. So then the discussion helped the applicant to understand two things, that the product, so the cells that are treated and expanded ex vivo and then in vivo printed, are an advanced medicine therapy product, so an ATMP. And there is another important consideration that the bioprinter, so the medical device that is used to print these cells in the patient, is actually an independent delivery device. It's a medical device. And for the medical device, the regulation should be done at the level of the national competent authority. So we referred the applicant to the closest national competent authority for the medical device certification. We have now the last example, again coming from academia, and this time the applicant was developing a new strategy to treat ocular opacities. So patients who have visions of like granules in front of their eyes, and then it impairs their vision. So the applicant says, this is a nanotechnology, but we don't know if it's a medicinal product or is a medical device. So we are using different strategies, some nanoparticles, but it could also be an encapsulated dye. And then actually the whole discussion went around how to identify the difference between a medicinal product and a medical device. And the core of this discussion was on the mechanism of action. So if the mechanism of action is pharmacological, then it's a medical device. Think about, for example, an interaction between a receptor on a cell surface and a molecule. That's a pharmacological interaction. But in this case, we found out that their mode of interaction was actually mechanic. So the putting close together this opacity, where aggregates of protein with these nanoparticles, there was no interaction receptor ligand. It was just a mechanical, and then it would cause the rupture of this opacity. So identify the fact that the mechanism of action was mechanic, it was easier to conclude that this type of product could highly be classified as a medical device and not as a medicinal product. And then we also were in contact with the national competent authority closer to the applicant, and we sort of referred to them via our colleagues. And this, so after these three examples, I think I can conclude here, and I will try, what I wanted to leave to you is actually two main messages after this talk. So what are we offering are the ITF briefing meetings that are really brainstorming-like type of interaction that are open to developers of both medicinal products and technologies as a very early contact with the regulators. And this early dialogue between you, the innovators, the medicine developers, and us, the regulators, is really fundamental to bring the medicines towards patients. And I would like to thank you all for your attention. And of course, you can always either contact us or look through our website for more information. Thank you.
Thank you, Valentina, for explaining in more detail what the ITF is all about, and definitely by providing some very relevant and examples. Hopefully that has stimulated our audience to think of similar situation they may want to reach out to us for. So thanks a lot. We, I believe, have 10 minutes. Is that correct? Yeah. For question. So I will get started on that, and please feel free to continue populating the Slido with question. If we can't answer all the question, maybe we have a way of answering some of them at a later point. The first one I have here is how much connected or disconnected, that is, are you from the work being performed at universities or research centers? I will turn to Maribel. No? Ralph? Okay, Ralph.
It's a very nice question. I think the Academia Info Day today shows that we want to be connected, and we are having some deeper connections with certain universities and research centers. And you heard examples this morning about how the agency is engaged in consortia, for example, where then often these consortia typically are led by universities across Europe. And I think I brought one example of the repurposing consortia, and one of these consortia is led in the Netherlands at a university in the Netherlands, in the southern part of the Netherlands, I should say. So I think this is a very nice question, but I want to ask my colleagues, what do we feel? How close are we connected? We are going to universities. We have been at technology transfer offices. We have given presentations to a good range of university organizations. We have engaged also with student organizations. So I think there are a lot of moving parts. So perhaps what I would say, it varies a little bit. What we are trying to shift the baseline and move on and to create open doors that you've heard about. And with time, this should lead to closer connections. Thank you.
Anyone else want to say something?
I would like to, agree with everything that Rafa said, but also my opinion is that the most intense research organizations are closer to us, but we don't get so many questions and requests from maybe research organizations that are more of a national or even regional context. They can also come to us. So just to say that we are always happy to address questions from academic developers.
Yes, Valentina?
Yeah, very quickly. But it's also true that we are basically here and we are reacting to the world around us. But it's nice to see that at least in the last 3 years, if I look at the numbers, at least for the ITF, we see more and more academic applicants coming to us. So, and that's how we are a little bit aware of what is happening around us. Of course, we don't have mapped every university across Europe, but luckily, as you might have heard, there are plenty of people with an academic background here, and we are still in contact with our research institutions. So, for example, I know in the Netherlands who works on pediatric oncology. Across Europe, we have some centers as a reference, but we are trying also by going to congresses to break this distance. So I think it will improve across the years, and we hope to be more and more open.
Thank you, and I can only encourage our partners here from academia to share their thoughts as well on whether they feel connected to us during the breaks as well, in an official fashion, of course, unofficial, fashion. The next question I have here is, do you also consider HTA in the consultancy of the ITF meetings? So, Valentina.
That's a good question. So we don't do it as a standard procedure, but if an applicant comes to us and asking also for an HTA representative, we would be open to have such person with us. We have the same with like notified bodies, which is a little bit different, is for the certification of medical devices. We will not proactively invite them, but if the applicant brings such a part as part of the applicant side, we are really open to have a dialogue with them. So for HTA, so health technology assessment, in many cases, I would say for ITF is very, very early stage, but it could be beneficial if applicants start thinking about that as well.
Thank you. What is the EMA Innovations Team view on in silico medicine and simulation with the aim of personalized therapy development? And I think there's a follow-up question here as well. Is there a working group in EMA about regulatory affairs on in silico clinical trials, medical device simulations, and medical data management and usage in general? So that's quite a big topic. So, Ralph?
Yeah, thank you. And we find this also a very exciting topic. So thanks for the question. And I will start an answer and of course invite others to chime in. We see both proposals that medicines are being developed with underpinnings of modeling and simulation, and we see methods being proposed to us that rely on modeling and simulations for dose finding, for optimizing early phase clinical trials, for analysis of later phase clinical trials. So scientific advice, for example, supports both the product development, where modeling and simulation plays a role, and also the method development, where also modeling and simulation either plays a role or it's in itself part. So I would encourage you to look at our website for letters of support for such modeling and simulation methodologies. We have a couple where then these letters of support look at data and proposals by developers, how to use modeling and simulation for the purposes that I mentioned, can also be to identify target structures, to interpret medical imaging, for dose finding, trial analysis, and efficient clinical trials. And I would like to say that this is not only done at the EMA for these proposals by developers, but we also internally have competencies on modeling and simulation as a modeling simulation working group where experts from across Europe are looking at such cases and the various applications of modeling and simulation in product development. So it's an integral part of both our advice and our assessment. More broadly, we have the International Council for Harmonization, the ICH, that has a reflection paper on what is called their Model-Informed Drug Development, MIDD. And that's also very interesting, perhaps for you to be aware of, that we are trying to have an internationally concerted effort in leveraging the usefulness of modeling and simulation for method and product development. So I wanted to combine in this answer the two questions here. I may not fully cover it, but I think that's at least something I wanted to plant here, if anyone wants to add.
Thank you. I think you could have a full hour on that topic if you wanted to.
Yes.
I'll take an easy question here. We all know money talks, so the question here is the scientific advice free for academia?
Okay, thank you for the question. At the moment, scientific advice is free of charge for academia if it's within the orphan or the prime schedule. Outside those schedules, we don't act, or the pilot, the repurposing pilot or the ATMP's pilot. Outside the pilots and these orphan and prime schedules, we cannot offer currently free scientific advice, but we are working on it. Anyone wants to add something?
Maybe I can. Oh, you. Sorry. The European legislator is interested to support developers from the not-for-profit sector, and I already alluded to the pharmaceutical strategy in one of the slides. This is where the topic on which the European Parliament and Council are working together with the Commission for setting a future-proof new framework. We don't know yet what will be in there, but in the current draft there are, for example, provisions how to support developers from the academic sector with free scientific advice. Separately, we anticipate that in 2025 there will be fee incentives available for academia to come for scientific advice in particular. We do realize this is part of the longer research and development endeavors and the various fees that may come, but it is an important feature, and 2025 is still a couple of months away, yes, and we still encourage you, even if you have important and pressing projects and pressing regulatory questions, do approach us, please. We will see what we can do. As we mentioned, we have academia briefing meetings to capture you right where you are. No application form, an email is enough. Then we have the innovation task force taking it to the next step and organizing a more formal discussion around briefing questions that come from you, and then scientific advice. And we'll find a way to address your pressing questions, starting from where you are right now, even if there is no fee incentive at the moment.
Thank you, Ralph. The last two questions actually I have here relate to patents. So the first one is, how is IP protected during the different advisory round of different platforms, I guess we've talked about? Developers with pending patents are reluctant to submit a protocol for advice out of fear this platform counts as public spaces. Maybe we'll try with this one, and then the next one I think is fairly straightforward.
Yes, thank you. I think I can take both. Well, everything that is shared with the EMA is confidential, strictly confidential. So unless you publish it, it would not be considered public space. So it would not affect your novelty, okay, or inventive activity. Regarding how is IP protected during the different advisory rounds, this is up to your intellectual property protection strategy. So the EMA is not involved in the patenting process at all. We do not interact with the patenting process, or we do not suggest patents, encourage you to patent. That's a whole different system. So just be confident that everything that is shared with the EMA is strictly confidential. So in that regard, you can come to us at any stage of protection. And just so you know that as soon as a patent is applied for, that date is your effective date of protection if the patent is later granted. So don't be afraid you are protected already if you have a patent application. Okay. Anyone else wants to add?
Yeah, so within the ITF, we had a couple of requests where the applicant in the request form said patent pending. Sometimes they put their code. The same counts for publication. So we had concerns from researchers, hey, my publication is submitted, is currently under peer review, but we want to make sure that this data is not shared with anybody else. Be confident that we will just take the information you send us to understand what you're doing and will not be shared with anyone else.
Thank you very much for the answers. I think we're over time already. So I'll hand it over back to Ralph for the next session. But thanks for the three speakers for this session. Very insightful. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you very much indeed. I also find it exciting, in particular the questions. I know we've got a couple more, but maybe if there's time and after the event, we still will be here for you to chat with us. I'm also very much excited to invite now my colleagues IJsbrand and Monica to join us here on the panel for what will be now our session 5, which we hope will be as interesting to you as the previous sessions. Before we dive into the session on opportunities at the EMA, we want now that we have completed looking at medicines and procedures and advices and questions that were burning for you on how to engage. We want to redo again the Slido and the Slido questions that we have asked you in the very beginning. So please get back to your Slido and let us know if now you're perhaps have a different interest in human medicines, veterinary medicines, and regulatory practice. Now, you will notice these are proportions, so I will look at the absolute numbers if we have made it possible that there is a higher number now of those who have responded. So please click away and give us your impression, what you're interested in. I think we had a high proportion of regulatory practice, and here we have now at least 60 times 5. This would be 3 colleagues. Oh, now quite a number, 10 veterinary medicines development. That's growing as well, and that is, I think, thanks to the exciting presentation and engagement that we had together with you during the earlier sessions today. Okay. Thank you very much. So that was the interesting question. for where you are. And now we go to the next question that maybe give us a data. What did you take away? What do you now know about the type of products that EMA is regulating? Have a look. Does the EMA have responsibility to regulate cancer products? 10, 100% yes. All of the above, okay. Oh, fantastic. Thank you for being so fast. That's amazing. And we gave you the clue in, I think, Christina's presentation. It says all of the above, even though this is now the top solution. So all of those beneath, indeed, cancer, viral treatments, certain viral infections, allergies, diabetes, cardiovascular, that's all included in the scope of the EMA now. Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So that's perfect to get it so right. And then we go to the last question, please. At which stage an academic developer can contact the EMA? So here, what do you think? When establishing international collaboration and networking, when determining a research strategy, when doing non-clinical studies, when doing early clinical studies for marketing authorization application. And here, I think the choice was, is A included or not? And I think we want to say that even already at the stage when establishing international collaboration networking, the regulator is here as we can use our knowledge and experience from working with other regulators internationally, from understanding the different legal frameworks across the world, also for the benefit of setting up projects where the idea is typically to have a single global medicine development, and that benefits, of course, talking early about these plans and not only coming to one or the other agency and saying, we already agreed this here or there. So with the idea to have a single global medicine development that serves the interest of patients around the globe, I think all of the above would also be the right answer here. So thank you very much for joining us in that perspective. Let's close the poll here. And just thank you very much indeed for taking all the questions so seriously as we do. Very good. So now it's about opportunities at the EMA. And I'm very excited that I have two colleagues that I very much also like working with. And this is on the two aspects of traineeship. How does it feel and what's the experience being a trainee at the agency? And then followed by a presentation on more systematically career options that we have. And I'm excited to be joined here and will first introduce my colleague IJsbrand and then later Monica. IJsbrand, you have a Bachelor of Science in Medicine from Maastricht University. Goedemiddag, yeah, welcome. And you have been part of the EMA's trainee program. You are no longer a trainee, but we welcome you very much here and report and explain your experience as a trainee in the task force data analytics and methodology. And you already mentioned a couple of interesting keywords in your CV, which is machine learning, data analytics, data science. So I'm sure that will be very much of interest to all. So please, over to you, IJsbrand, about your traineeship.
Yes, thank you very much. Just to scope that a little bit, it is traineeship plus career path at EMA, right, if you will. So do we have slides? I did send them. I would hope there are. Yes, beautiful. Thank you. So I will just talk a little bit about my career path. Learned while working here, just to give you a little bit of flavor what it would be like if you were also to engage with the EMA in the future. So as has already been established 5 times, yes, I was a trainee here 3 years ago. And following me, Monica will give a more structured overview of the traineeship itself. Next slide, please. Yeah, so for my own structure, just my brief academic background, the traineeship itself, then how that really set me up for my first role here, and also then my current roles, and I'll end up on a few lessons learned. Next slide, please. My background, I had a BSc in medicine, but while studying that, I noticed I liked the science, but maybe not so much the day-to-day of what that work really entailed. I eventually ended up dropping out of medical school, doing a little bit of soul searching and realizing, I actually like the science. So I ended up contacting a professor in Leiden, and I worked in his lab in endocrinology for about a year. And I realized, lab science is actually quite fun. But while I was exposed to that, I realized I started just building some kind of data solutions because I always just enjoy being on the computer. And I realized, hey, this is something maybe I can I'm kind of good at. Maybe I can also do it professionally. So once I started the master degree in Leiden, I got more exposure to other labs like neuroscience and also to the ICU, and then ended up building this is what I think already in 2018, a machine learning model which predicted mortality for ICU patients using, I think, around 20,000 patients of data that we collected at the time. So this is really just raw physiological data. Now, so for me, there was, of course, the question, this sounds fun, health data science. Can I find a position which really mixes these two worlds? Next slide, please. So I got my degree, and on the top right, you can probably tell from what time this was. So I started looking around also for different PhD positions, and EMA had just moved due to Brexit in 2016, and the traineeship had been closed for a while, and they just opened it up to a new batch of trainees. And I found a role within the healthcare data department, which, of course, those two words, clearly these are bringing these two worlds together. And I think I had an absolutely amazing traineeship project, which it says there. So it was to automate the screening of medical literature for descriptions of side effects. And specifically, this was for generics that are on the market for around 300 substance groups on the market. So we sometimes pick up to like 3,000 new articles every day that we need to screen for side effects. We ended up automating aspects of that and putting it in production, and it's called OWLS. We started with the icon and worked our way backwards to a name. You can see the output on the screen of a kind of what people would receive in the email. Next slide, please. Now, it's not only work, of course, a traineeship. I think it's a really special thing because you get people who travel from all across Europe. So they bring their different cultural, but also different academic backgrounds. Because EMA, I'm sure you've heard today, has got quite a lot of different departments with different backgrounds. So you get a nice heterogeneous mix. But because nobody knows, I guess, except for the Dutch people, nobody knows people in the Netherlands, you get this quite tight-knit community. So that's, you start hanging out together a lot, which is nice. There's also an extra bonus, which I'm not sure will be in Monica's slide, but there's also something informally, I guess, known as the trainee hotline, because you've worked together, or I should say, because you've socialized together. These trainees, they all spread out to different parts of the agency. So if you ever need anything from a different department, you also always have good contacts with them. And then the third one is a little bit cheesy when I wrote it down, but I think it's kind of true. The traineeship, it's not only about working, but also to have fun and make friends. Next slide, please. So then my first paid role at EMA, somewhat different, actually. This was an organizational role, and I think the job description said something along the lines of, you have to organize meetings and also take minutes. And I thought, oh, that doesn't sound so great. But I started zooming into the topic a little bit more, and it's actually ended up being quite something I really liked. So I put the definition of what the initiative was about. So it's called Accelerating Clinical Trials in the EU, or ACT-EU. And as it says there, it's an initiative to transform the EU clinical research environment in support of medical innovation and better patient outcomes. And what ended up happening is that I was exposed to a much more political side of EMA, because this is actually the first time that member states, the European Commission and the EMA, in response to COVID, really decided, we should work together and accelerate clinical trials, if you will, right? We have to work together on this and make sure that we have clinical evidence sooner so that we can make our decisions quicker as well. Now, that's, I think, another lesson then for me was, different roles will teach you different things. Don't maybe look too much at the job description, and you might, get things out of it which end up being useful later. Next slide, please. Now, my current roles, I would say, are twofold. Because I was already closely involved with EnactEU, I had an opportunity to really jump on this kind of new topic, which now called like clinical trials analytics. It's kind of just realizing that we as the EMA and more broadly, we as EU regulators sit on top of a lot of clinical trials, up to like 70,000 clinical trials. We have the complete overview essentially of the clinical research environment. And we're trying to see how we can make better use of analyzing that data to support our decision making. Now that's very like internally focused, but we're also kind of starting to recognize more and more that that data is quite important also like externally, also probably to academia, to who use that for their own, want to, for instance, track maybe the uptake of innovation. So on that, a little bit of self-promotion. We're holding a workshop in January 25-26, specifically to set up an EU research agenda on clinical trials analytics. So, please feel free to either come or, alternatively join online and tell us what your priorities are on clinical trials and data. Now, then the other part of what I'm doing now, it's something called a product owner. And it's something, before I did it a year ago, I needed to Google what that actually meant. It means that you're kind of at the interface between IT and business needs, and you prioritize what a development team should be developing. And I think it's a really interesting project because we're building this data analytics platform, which is trying to onboard like all the agency's interesting data sources, especially the interesting data sources from the perspective of clinical evidence. So our clinical trials, our side effects, et cetera, et cetera. And we're starting to build some really interesting things. I cannot take credit for all these bullet points here, but I do think it's worthwhile mentioning. Some colleagues I think that spoke today are also involved in these things. But very topical today, of course, we're starting to monitor shortages of medicines, but also medical devices. We are tracking the health of the EU clinical research environment, understanding which trials are being run where, which types of phase, which therapeutic area, et cetera. But also to track innovation and new developments. And then lastly, we are also starting, it's very, I guess, very 2023, to start looking at large language models, your ChatGPT, how can we use that to structure our large amounts of electronic paper that we hold within the regulatory environment. Yes, last slide, please. Yes, so just concluding lessons learned before I hand over. Yeah, try different things, I would say, but be very critical about the bits that you like and don't like, right? So that you can make a nicer palette for yourself later. Don't forget to have fun and make friends. And also the third one, which is a really, important one for me, different roles will teach you different things, and you can take those things, further on in your career. So on that, the bottom line in a way is that I think the traineeship was a great starting point / continuation of a career. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much. Back to you, Ijsbrand. This was really quite fascinating. Perhaps without knowing, you recapitulated a metaphor used by Christina in the very first presentation. You all know that's the owl that Christina mentioned, and I think it's quite nice to see that coinciding in a way. And also thank you for addressing both or showing how our work as staff on products is complemented by work on overarching topics. You mentioned ActEU, we mentioned a couple before, and it's typically that one is involved in both these levels because the work on a product is informed by understanding what is the overarching, what is the combining driver behind. So I think that that's a very important flavor, and also flagging these recent initiatives where we have made efforts to work even closer together with the member states that were always part of our network with whom we've worked intensively, but with the Commission and the member states, the EMA is now really extremely closely working on a number of topics very concretely. So thank you very much for this. Colleagues, we will have a Q&A after the session. Some of you have already asked some very interesting questions. Please feel free to put them into Slido so that we can use the last 20 minutes then to discuss these matters. It's now a great pleasure for me to hand over to my colleague Monika Hankiewicz. You are the head of talent acquisition at the EMA. That's the service and part of the organization that's responsible for selecting and recruiting a diverse group of colleagues. I think you mentioned temporary contract agents, seconded national experts, collaborating experts, and we've got a couple of more, the trainees not to forget. You yourself are a talent that we have acquired from working internationally with NATO and abroad. So it's great to have you, and it's your time. And thank you very much for coming and laying out the career opportunities.
Thank you very much. For those online, I will turn on my microphone. For those in the room, I wouldn't have to. My voice always is much louder. I'm loud. I think it's a part of the job to do the good marketing. I spoke to some of you during the morning, right? So you got a flavor of it. It's pleasure presenting with ICE because this cohort of trainees was very special to our heart. They were the first in Amsterdam. They came in a super difficult time. Literally every week they were getting like 3 messages. Come to the office. No, don't come to the office. Come to the office. No, don't come to the office, because it was COVID. So we did not know. We were reacting every day. And we did really bond, everybody, I think, including my office, with them, because we had to provide this social life he was describing. Yeah. So we were organizing them Valentine's, Queen's Day, Secret Santa online, So now he says, yes, social life is great. But on a serious note, if I can have next slide. My office indeed is responsible for a variety of talent acquisition. So we do acquire talent in variety of methods. And one of them is a traineeship program. And traineeship program is, at the moment, we have more than 50 trainees within literally all organizational entities of the organization. The good thing is that when you apply for the traineeship within EMA, you are not applying to a pool or a bag of a called traineeship opportunity. Every single opportunity is published separately. So that's what I said. You can really choose and pick what you want to do in the future, right? In your career, what interests you, where you want to contribute. Our traineeship is paid. You are here for 10 months, and you can work for us full time or part time. You can combine it with your PhD, for example. We have every year we have 5 to 10 PhD students combining their research, PhD research with traineeship. Due to the initiative last year of some trainees, we now have teleworking for trainees. So you work on premises, but you also can work from home, having a good work-life balance. My generation would say, your generation would say, life-work balance. Okay, we do pay you a stipend to maintain you in the Netherlands. It is now, I think, €1,800 net, so tax-free because it's a stipend, and you can apply if you are EU or EEA national, if you are a recent university graduate, so no longer than 12 months after your graduation, or you are on Erasmus or similar program, exchange program, or you are indeed PhD student. The third requirement is your thorough knowledge of English. We do not ask for any language certificates, so dare to apply if you speak English. And of course, the second European language, which normally is your mother tongue, so you're already qualifying. If I can have next slide, please. So why applying for our traineeship program? Apart from what I was mentioning, you do contribute to the mission, and one of the requirements to submit, and Ralph knows it because we always are very hard on that requirement. One of the requirements to have a trainee is to give meaningful work, contributing to the strategy of the organization. It's not copying, it's not filing, it's not responding to dull messages, automatic routine work. 70% of your work will be on a project, okay? And then 30%, life is not pink.
30% will be routine jobs, yeah, but not bringing coffee to your mentor. If they ask you, then you come to me. Of course, you grow professionally. Not only you are assigned a mentor throughout your traineeship, but also, as I mentioned, you are interacting with colleagues from across the organization and other trainees. We do organize development activities for you, but also you can attend regular workshops, participate in meetings, committees. You are invited by your team, but also agency-wide. And I think it's important now that you are in the building. It's important to say that this is the almost zero energy rating building, so super sustainable. Plus, there is a very good discounted meals in the cafeteria. I think it's important. Social life, I mentioned already. We have yoga classes, ping pong, sport communities, DJ nights, whatever you can imagine does happen here. Next slide, please. So this is about the traineeship program. Now, on top of the trainees, we recruit, my office recruits so-called statutory staff. And statutory staff are contract agents or temporary agents. I will talk about very shortly because those positions require experience. Again, everything is published transparently online with all the requirements online as well. Again, you have to be EU, EEA citizen, have thorough knowledge of English and fulfill the specific conditions for the vacancy. At the moment, we have 2 vacancies published, but we have upcoming 2 more. Now, you think that this is not too many vacancies published. However, as a result of each vacancy, we do establish talent pool. So we publish less than we hire. So from each of the vacancies, we may hire up to from 5 to 10 people, for example, right? We will establish a talent pool and then hire from that talent pool. So if you see something that interests you, I do encourage to apply. And also I spoke to somebody and dare to apply, okay? Don't think like, oh, maybe I don't meet this requirement. Yeah, if you don't apply, you don't know. To get to the talent pool, you need to have 60% of requirements. You have to meet 60% of the requirements. It's not much, huh? So if you think about it, so just dare to apply. Next slide, please. And again, super meaningful work with multinational, multidisciplinary teams. Again, great building, development opportunities, huge internal mobility program, but also mentoring, peer coaching, career reflection, etc., trainings. And I think they're very good work-life balance. So you have flexible working arrangements if you are a statutory staff, hybrid working, super generous annual leave and official holidays. I think it's 6 weeks a year. No? Next slide, please. And then other opportunities. So not only you can be a trainee or you can be a statutory staff, as we call it, but you can also be a collaborating experts. We are working closely, very closely. Emmanuel is new here, but he will learn. We are working closely with your task force on the collaborating experts. Collaborating experts, again, everything is published online. So these are the experts that come for free to our agency or work remotely on a specific deliverable. Okay, so very specific, which is then published. And so if it interests you and you think, you know what, I want to contribute, but also want to learn from the experience, that's something to consider. We also have seconded national experts, and these are the employees of EU public or institutions that can be seconded to us. Again, everything transparently published, every opportunity is published. I think it is a key word. So if I can have next slide. That's why I encourage you to click on the QR and create a job alert on our website. You can do it either with the keyword or type of the position, and so you will get email to your inbox whenever we publish something of your interest. And this way, you will stay in touch with us. Thank you very much.
Fantastic, Monica. Thank you so much for laying out the important principles, dare to apply and tick the box, or if you're not quite sure, tick it anyway and explain. Yes, the explanation is what will be important. So that's, I think, lessons learned for everyone. So I think this is great to have you both. And we also have a good number of questions. Some already were answered, so let's bring up the Slido and have a look at the question. So the first is it compulsory to do a traineeship before getting a job at the EMA? And if it's not, how many of the current EMA staff do you know have been previous trainees? Is there any figure you might have?
It's not compulsory to do the traineeship before getting a job at the EMA. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I mean, depending from which perspective you're looking, our jobs already have to be published. So we do not have because we are the EU public institution, you know, we are working taxpayers' money, spending taxpayers' money. We cannot give you a job after completing your traineeship without you actually applying and competing with all the other candidates. Yeah. Do you have extra perks in a sense that you know the agency, you know what we are talking about? Maybe you have a deeper insight in the role you're applying for. Yes, of course, but we cannot favor you in the process or hire you or former trainees, right, guys? Without going through the painful recruitment process. Now, painful, but with pleasant people, right? Okay, we are very collegial, very nice people. We have, high standards of selecting people, candidates, but we are pleasant overall. So no, it's not it's not mandatory to complete traineeship, but it does help. Definitely does help. In terms of the statistics, I don't have the statistics. I should have them, but I don't have them in my head. Roughly, let's say 10%, 20% will become interims, and then maybe 5% will become staff members of every intake. So.
Yeah, thank you very much, Monica. And I think it's true that we're interested both in young professionals and also we have a good number of positions for highly experienced professionals. So I think please also disseminate this information you get here if you are in a laboratory where there is an expert, for example, and would be interested in some of the seconded or temporary agent positions there. We have 3 questions that are related. Does EMA offer traineeship for professionals, students, and master students? So maybe we can just take this together briefly.
So traineeship for professionals, not really. I mean, you have to be a recent graduate within the last 12 months. So it's not for somebody who worked in worked in professional life for years and then wants to come to do a work placement. Those are the professional vacancies, like Ralph mentioned. When you can apply for people with experience. Master students, no, you have to be graduated. If you're a master student, we would accept master students if they are participating in the exchange program, such as Erasmus+, for example, right? Then we will accept them. Otherwise, you have to be graduated. And the third question was masters students. Yeah, I think I answered all the questions.
Since, as you mentioned, I mean, we work very closely on the collaborating expert, maybe I would like to add that actually as master student, you might not have the possibility, let's say, exactly to access to the traineeship during your master, but you might still have the possibility to collaborate with us via the collaborating expert program, which is also open to people which are even to students that want to contribute, let's say, that want the EMA to contribute in a way to their master thesis work, and that this master thesis work has a relevance for the EMA. So this is a possibility. So you can also look at open calls for collaborating expert, and that's, let's say, open to profiles which do not require necessarily that you already have your master. Thank you.
Indeed, we had some collaborating experts that did the assignment as a collaborating expert as part of their mandatory work placement as part of their studies, for example. So that's also a possibility. But it's unpaid from our perspective, right?
Okay, very good. So I think I want perhaps to ask IJsbrand if you want to take the next one. Is the traineeship the only job you have at that time? You know the answer that we're expecting, but
well, for me it was. I do think it is. Is it possible? It is theoretically possible to mix it with a PhD for some. Is it not? So, but for most, yes. For most, it's their full-time commitment, and it probably makes sense, right? Because it's also kind of demanding, and you also you get out what you put in, right? So if it's 50%, you only get out 50%, if you will.
It's possible to have other jobs, obviously, but we would have to then assess whether there is any conflict of interest. And also from the manager perspective, it's always I shouldn't be saying this, but it's always better to have somebody 100% than somebody 50%. Yeah, if it's not combined with PhD, obviously. But so it's always this preference for people who commit, as IJsbrand said, full time, and then we give full time back.
Very good. So let's finish then perhaps with this. My PhD contract just finished. Can I still apply on that? And then we have a couple of questions that are for interested colleagues outside of the European Union.
Unfortunately, when the PhD is finished, unless you are a recent graduate from BA or BSc or MA, you cannot apply. You are not eligible anymore. I encourage, however, to apply for statutory staff. Why? Because we do count PhD as work experience. Up to 3 years of PhD can be counted against work experience. Okay, so I think that's a good way. And for the non-EU citizens, unfortunately, because we are EU institution, agency, we cannot hire from outside of the EU for our own positions. However, we do use so-called interim support. In that sense, we use a few recruiting agencies that work closely with us, and they can hire a non-EU citizen to then be posted or assigned to the EMA. But us as the EMA, we will not be able to do it.
Thank you very much, Monica. That's also very clear and very helpful, and thank you for opening this perspective as well. So there is still the general question that I kept: what is the standard recruitment procedure? I think you have addressed most of it, but perhaps if you think of academic colleagues, what have they struggled with in the recruitment procedure? Any word of advice?
Yes. So I will not go into the standard recruitment procedure in detail, because we have quite good documentation published online. So if you scan the QR code, it will take you to the careers. Everything is published there quite openly. Now, two things. There is one, but the second is prepare. Okay, you have one shot. So prepare application, prepare to the test, prepare to the interview, prepare. I think that's the key.
Very good. Perhaps I can ask Pierpaolo if you can give us a quick overview on how to apply as collaborating expert, in particular with our yearly rhythm that we have. When should colleagues pay particular attention?
So usually we have periods where we publish most of the calls for collaborating experts. So we discuss with the internal departments, and we see which kind of expertise we feel that we would need as a support for our activities. And then usually I would say around July, before summer, we usually publish a set of calls for collaborating experts. So that's a good time. Let's say you can start from April to July to look around and on our, let's say, career portal, and you can look for the opportunities for a collaborating expert. Usually then you have a call and you will have to fill, let's say, the application call. And to apply, of course, we need to verify, you need to be, let's say, you need to have somehow to be linked to an institution. So you can come as, let's say, individual. You cannot come as necessarily as individuals. So you need to be associated to, I don't know, a university or even a national competent authority. And then you can apply, and we will check at the conflict of interest. And after that, let's say you will get an interview, and it's a normal process, mostly.
Okay. Very good. I think that covers it, and also gives you perhaps some thoughts about the calendar, because that makes sense. So please subscribe to the alerts that Monica has mentioned, and also think of this type of calendar-based events that were mentioned here. Monica, we did have 2-3 questions on persons who are interested in more than one traineeship. How is it being handled? How is it being perceived on our end also when we look at it? And I can complement if you want.
I think you can apply for any position you want. If you want to work for the TRS at the same time in HR and you are motivated for both, please do apply. What I urge people to do, however, is to adjust their motivation letter to the assignment they are applying for. I think that what is the most discouraging when we read the application is the copy and paste. And when I don't see a motivation, why do you want to work for me? Yeah, in talent acquisition, but I see this very generic blur that the candidate used in 20 other placements. Yeah, no, I'm not interested as well. If they are not interested, I'm not interested. So show your interest, show your motivation, show that you did prepare and you really want this particular placement, not any placement. Yeah.
This would have been my addition. And as a reader of these motivations, I really concur that that's what we are looking for to understand. And I think it's a good opportunity. The space is quite limited, I believe, but that also helps you helps to avoid that there's too much, and to bring in some focus. And I offer you also to look at parts of our website. I know we have a lot of web pages with a lot of content, but please do use your favorite internet search engine and see what you can find out about the recruiting entity. We also have a web page about our scientific publications where you can get an idea. Many of us are on social media platforms where you can see what are the topics that we are professionally working with. And that helps you to sharpen your motivation and actually maybe even see if that motivation overlaps well with the scope of these activities.
I wonder at what point we will stop saying use the search engine and start saying just ask ChatGPT what we do in the area of, that's but sure, ChatGPT. And one appeal, if I may, from my side, trust me, we do recognize when motivation is written by ChatGPT. We do and candidates do start writing this. This is use technology to your advantage, but it is your motivation and your drive to work for us, not ChatGPT's.
Check. IceBrand, do you want to talk a bit about the specific areas initiatives where external academic centers, institutions can offer their support or actively engage? I know you mentioned already one, so elaborate, but there are others if you just want to cast a wide net.
Cast a wide net. Well, I assume these efforts is maybe related during my presentation. And, I mentioned, of course, that we're holding this workshop because we want to think of use cases for data on clinical trials, but that bit of work is happening within ACT-EU, so within this large program on clinical trials. As part of that large program on clinical trials, we're also in the setup phase of something called the multi-stakeholder platform, where the idea is really that it's kind of like a central European forum to really touch on lots of different areas of clinical trials. And that's all about, giving a voice, giving a place for, academic centers, for citizens, whoever wants to engage on these on these types of topics. So please look on the website on ACT-EU and for the specific topic of the multi-stakeholder platform, because yes, it would be great if you could contribute.
Yeah, absolutely a priority topic. So that's given due importance here as well. We offer also news services that you can subscribe to, so please consider that as well. I think we even have Atom XML feeds for RSS readers, if that mentions something, if that means something for some of you. So I think if you want to keep connected, there are various ways, and we are active on several channels. So we hope you're not missing an opportunity in that. Monica, I'm afraid there's one more question on specific traineeship, the Blue Book internship, and then I think from our team we want to briefly go to the question on collaboration with UK universities, and then I think it's about time to close the session. So any last burning questions, please enter them now, and we might be able to take them. But first you.
Sure. Can you still apply for the training if you've done Blue? Of course. I mean, we are not limiting. We've had some colleagues who applied to us after Blue Book and traineeship within another EU agency. That's fine. We don't limit this. We don't say you have to only do one and that's it, right? It's your life choice if you want to do traineeships.
Very good. And here now the last question, I just want to take it briefly up, is about collaboration with universities. And I think that brings us back to how the EMA engages in public-private consortia, for example, or typically. And in these consortia, we currently have around 30 where we are engaged. There can be also universities from the United Kingdom, I understand, after recent changes and agreements. So I trust that there will be some way of interacting there. If in doubt, you can contact us perhaps from that university, but again, in these consortia that are being formed under Horizon Europe and that has the scope to include such universities, I believe that there will be opportunities. These consortia approach us sometimes at an early stage where they are forming their partnerships and the scope of their work. At that time, we will only keep at a high level and review if it makes sense for EMA possibly to be later working together. But once a consortium has obtained a Horizon Europe grant or a comparable grant, then of course we are free to be approached by the consortium, and you can request involvement of EMA. It will go into a process where we are looking at, can we contribute as the European Medicines Agency? What would be an important contribution? So it's not always possible to be involved, but we are giving it due consideration and are open for your request coming from these consortia. So with that, I think we have also addressed that last question, and I want to thank you very much for having made also this last session really interactive. I've learned also a thing or two, so thanks to you both for answering these very interesting questions. I will look up the Blue Book, and I would like to encourage you all to keep what you have heard, but also to share it with your colleagues. I don't know if you have been tweeting away or doing other things, but please use what you have heard on this Friday morning and bring it to your colleagues, give them the pointers that you have. The material will be on the website. There will be a cut recording so that it can also be of future reference and use. And that's the intention we want to have for today. So I'm closing now this session with many thanks to IceBrand and Monica, and back to you. Thank you. You would not close. So after we've closed this session, it's my pleasure to hand back over to Emmanuel if you want to send us out with your words as the head of the task force. Thank you.
Yeah, and I promise I haven't used the ChatGPT for that. I may be closing the workshop for today, but I really don't want to take credit away from the team who has organized this workshop. So really a big thank you for the team for doing that. But also a big thank you for the audience here on site, but also online for contributing, not only with your question, but the open discussion I believe have happened during the coffee break. From my personal take, I would like to finish this day by giving you multiple elements of hopes, which I've captured throughout that workshop. The first one is I hope we gave you a good flavor of what the agency is and does, but also most importantly, what the agency ambition to do in the future. So that's one thing. We're one element of an ecosystem, and we're not just driving that alone. So hopefully you get that flavor for yourself. The other element of hope that I have is that we've convinced you that we are not some type of secret society, hiding behind closed doors, and that definitely we're not a static, stuck-in-time institution. That what we do is a process of continuous improvement with the partnership we establish with our key stakeholder, including you as academia. The next element of hope I have is that we've convinced you that we're not born regulators. We've had good example, but that we can grow to be regulators with our own flavors and own expertise. So I think this hopefully will resonate with you as you're maybe challenging yourself to decide whether you want to be a regulator or not, or at least work in that environment. And finally, I hope we've convinced you that you as academia, or at least been reassured that you are a key stakeholder to us, your opinion and your voice matters, and that you can work with us, not just as a stakeholder, you've used or heard that word very often, but as an equal partner. So these are pretty much my closing remark, and I again want to thank you all for your contribution, and also hope that we can have these opportunities more in the future. Thanks.